to borrow one from Debbie. Okay, the hour of 6 o'clock is upon us. So with that, we will begin our regularly scheduled city council meeting. So the date is October 21st, 2024, and the time is 6 p.m. So we did hold an executive session prior to this meeting in regards to employee matters. No decisions are made in those executive meetings. None was made today. It was simply to discuss those employee matters as we move forward in that regards. So with that, we will begin our city council meeting tonight with an invocation offered by Pastor Tony Sparrow of the Canyon Hill Nazarene Church. Tony, are you? I do not see him. Mr. Porter, Pastor Porter, do you mind filling in for us? So we'll have Jim Porter start us with an invocation. So if you please stand for that and then remain standing afterwards for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father God, we thank you for this time and place. We thank you for this agency in this organization that leads us. We ask that you would give them abundant wisdom this evening as they tackle some of the issues that are facing them. Father, we thank you for the growth of this city, for the wise planning that is so evident, and we pray that your will would be done this evening. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much, Mr. Porter. We appreciate your willingness to do that for us and help us out to start our meeting off. Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Doty?
Here.
Register? Here. Stoddard?
Here.
Williams?
Here.
Allgood?
Here.
Dittenberg?
Here.
Very good. Thank you so much. All council members are present and accounted for. Is there any conflict of interest declarations from any members of the council regarding any items on the agenda this evening? Okay, we do not have any special presentations. Do you have the sheet for? Yeah. Okay, so we do have one person signed up to address us for audience participation. Just remember that audience participation is for those items that are not listed on the agenda this evening. Jean Kreidebring, if you'd please come forward, and then if you would just state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Jean Kreidebring, as I stand before you, please know that I am concerned, truly concerned about the inner workings and image of Caldwell. I'm not complaining, just sharing observations and my sincere concern. I would like to take this opportunity to readdress transparency and refute a comment made at the last council meeting. Transparency is highlighted throughout the city's website, but I think Caldwell is truly missing the mark. According to Better Works, transparency helps everyone in the workforce understand the current state of the business, the strategy, and how every employee can contribute. When you have these conditions, your workforce becomes more engaged and effective. Without a transparent work environment, employees will have a hard time trusting leaders or understanding the company's vision. Less trust means less engagement, collaboration, and job satisfaction. Let me repeat part of it. Without a transparent work environment, employees will have a hard time trusting leaders. The city council members are elected employees. I've been at enough council meetings or watched them in their entirety to know that there is a concern about transparency, information, and thorough communication from the administration. Repeatedly, council members are begging for better communication, knowing necessary information ahead of the meetings. The council members are the checks and balances for the city's administration. Yet they are on record begging for prior knowledge, information, and to be kept in the loop. Mr. Mayor, I can see the frustration exhibited by your council. What message is this sending to the citizens? I would think the whole parking meter debacle would be a wake-up call. The council needs ample information to make informed decisions for the citizens and well-being of Caldwell. I implore you to keep them informed in advance of the public meetings. I may not be at every council meeting, but I do pay attention, especially to the budget workshops and hearings, and try to be an informed citizen. I've gotten to know that Raylyn North is extremely knowledgeable and does an amazing job juggling the various accounts, rules, and expenditures. She is willing to entertain questions and explain either via email or a phone call. When the fee increases were released, they were posted in the newspaper. Not everyone gets a newspaper. The interesting tidbit, though, is that the fee increases posted in the newspaper were not the same information given to the council. A prime example is the veterans discount. That wasn't posted in the paper, but it was found in the agenda packet from the last meeting. If you don't get a
If you could wrap
newspaper,
up your last comment. So if you could just wrap up on your last comment, the 3-minute mark just hit.
So, Council Member Dittenber, I take offense at your comment that you are spoon-feeding.
And I would also ask that you not single out any individual council members.
Well, if the community or other council members need more time to make an informed decision and have questions answered, high five and kudos to those council members to table the agenda item. Those wanting time to digest the information and ask questions are looking out for the best interest of the community. I commend them and thank them from the bottom of my heart for taking their job seriously. I would encourage everyone to do the same. Thank you for your time. I appreciate being able to take a few minutes of your time.
Thank you, Jean, appreciate that. And if you did want to meet with a council member individually, privately, I'm sure that they would make the time for you on that, so thank you. And we actually do have one other that wished to speak, Julie Warwick, if you would please come forward. And also, if you could please state your name and address for the record, then you'll be given 3 minutes as well for your comments.
Hi, Julie Warwick, 107 South 13th Avenue here in Caldwell. I'm an urban renewal commissioner, but tonight I'm just speaking as a 44-year resident of Caldwell who loves this city. You may not see me at many city council meetings, but if I'm not here, I'm watching at home. I just have a few things I'd like to say. First, thank you all for being willing to serve our city. The growth that we've experienced in Caldwell in the last 10 years has caused lots of growing pains, and I'm sure that many processes and policies need to change to keep up with that growth. As a resident, we count on the fact that our elected officials take on the job as city councilor and mayor knowing they're going to have to work together to keep Caldwell smoothly moving in the right direction. I've attended or watched literally hundreds of city council meetings over the last 15 years, and I've noticed that the civility and camaraderie that I used to see during city council meetings is gone. While healthy debate on issues is always good, what we're now seeing is folks that clearly don't respect each other, and that is really sad. I'm sure that each one of you ran for city council or mayor because you wanted to serve the city to the best of your ability. I want to see you treat each other as well as appointed officials with respect, whether you agree or not. Secondly, I was extremely disappointed watching the discussion during last week's meeting about our city attorney deciding to leave after 26 years at the end of his current appointment. While I'm not privy to the reasons this decision was made, I've seen in open meetings when the city attorney reps have been spoken to in a less than respectful way. It's like sometimes you forget that we're all on the same team. Losing Mr. Hilty and his associates brings with it an enormous loss of institutional knowledge. They've been with us since we were truly a small town and have guided us through years of growth and challenges. Whoever is chosen to replace this team will take years to get up to speed on how we have gotten to where we are and how to forge ahead. I'm grateful for their work and for the education they've provided me as a commissioner and to the council and mayor. Lastly, I've been guilty of not paying as much attention as I should have during the budget meetings and workshops. I do remember hearing something last year about the city making donations to local nonprofits, but as soon as I heard it, I forgot about it. I paid more attention this year to the workshops and meetings that were held to formulate the budget for fiscal year 2025. I'm not sure exactly how I feel about my tax dollars being donated to a charity rather than residents choosing to support a nonprofit on their own. We have many, many wonderful nonprofits in our city, and we would be a less caring community without them. However, I do question how it came to be that the city council is picking and choosing which nonprofits get those donations. One of Yeah, there's $69,600 in this year's budget that is being given to 9 local nonprofits. One of those nonprofits is getting $30,000 of that $69,000. I believe if we're going to use tax dollars to make charitable donations, there should be an application process and a citizen committee that forwards recommendations to the council about how the budgeted amount should be awarded. You are there to represent us and not to garner support for your favorite charities. Thanks for allowing me this time. Some of these thoughts have been brewing for a while, and I just felt like I needed to say them. I love Caldwell and want us to be as successful as we can be, and I know that you guys want this too.
Okay.
Thanks for
Thank
listening.
you so much. Okay, so that is all for our audience participation. So now we,
Mr. Mayor?
yes,
Can I just make a couple of comments? I appreciate you all coming to speak. I think it's very important to be, have your voices heard. Just a couple of quick little things. I know you didn't get to finish your comments, but I do agree with you, and I do believe in the transparency. And for Ms. Warwick, I just wanted to make it clear that the council doesn't pick the charities. Those are brought to us, and I'm not quite sure how they're picked, but we have a certain amount of money, I guess, that the council has to use, and I think they come throughout the year and ask. So when they come to the, that's how it works, right? They come to the meetings and talk about their services to the community, and then ask us, you know, if we want to donate a certain amount of money, and then we do, but they're not handpicked by us, nor are they like charities that we're associated with. They are people that have come to the meetings. And I think we did talk one time about maybe asking for a little bit more money to be donated to Meals on Wheels, because I know that we think that, or at least I think that's a great thing, but you had mentioned that you had it, your donations taken care of. So I just wanted it to be clear that it's not handpicked by council, that they come to the meetings and ask. And, yeah, that was it.
okay, thank you. So we are on to our consent calendar, and we do have some amendments. I believe there's a couple items being removed and one item being moved to new business.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Doty?
make a motion to amend the consent calendar, remove items 11 and 16 for future consideration as requested by staff, and move item 19 to new business for discussion as requested by council president.
We're good. Do we have a second? Motion from Councilor Doty and a second from Councilor Stodic for amendment to the consent calendar as noted. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. And then do we have a motion for approval of the consent calendar as amended?
So moved.
That's a motion from Councilor Doty and a second from Councilor Stodic to approve the consent calendar as amended. Very good. So with that, voting is open at this time. It's on its way. It's warming up. Take a walk.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and that motion passes unanimously. That moves us into old business. We do have an item of old business this evening. And just note, all old business items are considered action items.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Before we even start this, I'm wondering how we go about pulling out the fees for golf, airport, and parks to either have a workshop or some kind of action item where the public can speak on this.
so it may be good to at least listen and hear and kind of see what the council's, go ahead.
So I have comments on all the fees, and then my recommendation would be, because some of these fees are, even with golf, there's winter fees that if not implemented, we're gonna not charge winter fees. And so, my recommendation would be, yes, if you wanna pull out some of the fees or only approve some of them, we can mark off, by resolution, but at least we can get some of the fees approved, and then, I can come back in November, do a workshop, and then another public hearing. We already found in some of the previous approved fees that there was some typos, and so we're gonna have to bring back another public hearing to fix those anyway. So we will be coming back in November for those, if that's okay.
Yeah, I know for myself, for golf, parks and, airport where people are paying, where their, use fees, I guess, are going up, that I'm gonna wanna hear from them. At least I do.
So, yeah, if you can just, I mean, I have comments on all of them, and so, and then maybe that will help with some of the explanation, and then we can go from there.
I want to hear your comments, but I still want to hear from the user too, so that's going to be important to me.
Okay.
Okay,
Eddie, can you pull up the? Okay, so, with the fees, obviously we have, wow, this is a fast clicker. We have quite a few. I'm just gonna go one by one on each of these, and if you have questions, just interrupt me. But this is really the process and why, these fees. When I listened to the last city council, all of these fees that are requested are factored into the fiscal '25 budget some way or another. So since we are not currently collecting them, our revenue is going to be a little short because of that. Some of them have very small impacts. Some of them will have minimum impacts. But I just want to make that aware as well. So with city clerk fees, the biggest changes with city clerk fees are the train depot fees. We did a cost analysis, and me and the city clerk worked together to see what would be beneficial for that fee. I will say the cost came back a lot higher than the fee that we increased, but we know this is a public center that we want to make affordable to people to use. And so this really just helps to cover some of the repair and maintenance, electricity, and the long-term upkeep. As you know, this last couple of years, we replaced the roof and we did painting. So some of those fees cover just that regular repair and maintenance. That's just the cost of items have just increased significantly. Across all departments, you're going to see the public records requests, the paper copies, just that fee increased, and it's over 5% just because that cost is just so minimal. And so, but it was to standardize it across all departments. And then the replacement badges, those are also just due to the cost of supplies and staff time. So it's pretty minimal increases in the city clerk, but those percentages are based just because our fees are so low. With the Canyon Hill Cemetery, we looked at the fees and really the staff time, because with increases, if we increase staff, 3%, and then the health insurance increases, not only is it just the salaries that increase, those per-se benefits, all of those Social Security benefits, all of those things that, fringe benefits, that they increase as well. And that is something that we're not looking to just break even, especially with cemetery, because it is supported by property tax. But we do need to still pass on some of that cost to the user, just because not only is staff time more expensive, but fertilizer, repair and maintenance of equipment. And so that's why on average that cost was 3%, but then it was requested by cemetery staff to round to the nearest dollar just for processing ease. So that's why it's not just an even percentage across the board, but kind of rounded to that nearest dollar. One of the new fees that was on there was a 10% administration fee for the assisted sale of lots. And the reason that we added this was because it can be very time intensive for the admin assistant. And this is when someone puts a lot on a list, and then when someone walks in, they can buy off of the city's list, or they can buy a private lot, and the city will cover it for the current, or sell it for the current price. So if someone bought it lower, they're actually making money on it. And so we just asked for that 10% just to cover staff time, because it is a very intensive process. With the event center, so a lot of what fees increase, we looked at, I worked with both the Public Works Director and the Superintendent for the CEC Center. And as you know, with the CEC Center, it is supported by general fund. That general fund increased, or that support has increased over time. And so we're looking at, we looked at just what options we have for fee increases, as well as any new fees. And so we did add a new fee for the rental of Gabiola Field. because that had been requested, but there was not a fee in place, so we couldn't actually rent it when it was requested. So that's why some of those new fees are in there and why that fee increase. With the employee-based fee increases such as security, electrician, this is really just to cover wages, benefits, and overtime, since we're pulling city staff to help with that. So some of those can be quite pricey, especially if we're calling overtime on that. For the airport, these were recommended by the airport director, and I believe he did take it to the airport commission. But as you can see, even with the fee changes for the land lease, it'll bring in an additional $10,500 in the year. And then the new fees that are proposed will bring in between $500 and $2,500. So it's really, even though it does look like a higher percentage increase, it is really minimal. And we're very conscientious of what we're passing on to the airport users. However, it is one of those things that when we went to look at the budget for 25 and 26, especially with some of those bigger AIP projects that are coming in that are going to have a match, it will have to come from the general fund if we do not look at other options for funding sources for the airport. So finance just has the one fee. We're just passing along what the bank charges us for the NSF check. And this actually doesn't go to the finance department, but to the fund that it was charged to. So we just raised that from the $15 to the $25 because that is what is charged to us by the bank. For fire department, these fees were reviewed with the deputy chief. And a lot of these fees are fire prevention fees, and so they're the plan reviews and the time spent with the fire prevention, reviewing those plans. They were updated based off of actual wages. There was analysis done to look at, what should the wage be? Are we overcharging? Are we undercharging? Where are we actually charging? And with this department, especially with fire prevention, where a lot of these fees go to, in the last 3 years, the expenses for this have grown over 49%, where the fees and the revenues have stayed pretty flat and not grown at all. So I know, when we're increasing fees year over year, it's something that if we don't, then it could be a significant increase of 20 or 25% to cover some significant increases in expenses that we're trying to absorb, instead of hitting our reserve balance or looking at other options, especially when the requests are coming in from the community for those plan reviews. For the golf courses, so a lot of what the golf course fees are, and I understand they're pretty significant. When I originally got the golf course fees, they were from the previous Golf Pro. And then I worked with the new Golf Pro to really review them and see where they were going to end up. And right now with the golf courses, there is a timing on cash. Sometimes they are very cash poor, where they're running in the red, and sometimes they, during the summer have plenty of cash. It's just that timing, especially with payroll, with payables that come in. But there is those seasons that really hurt the golf courses. And our goal for the golf courses is to really make it to where they do not need the general fund support. And this last year, in fiscal year 24, was the first year that they had not had to purchase, or they did not have general fund support, meaning they were able to purchase their own capital and not actually have it purchased and donated to them by the general fund. And so that is really great. That's what we want to see. But they just broke even. They really don't have the long-term balance. They don't have the 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. If there was, I know Ken will talk about the sprinkler system and the pump system, and, you know, those are so expensive to replace, and so if we go to have to replace it, we are not gonna have the funding in the golf fund to do that. And those are 30 years old and they need replaced, but we just can't do it because we don't have the money. And so right now, those expenses of maintaining are so expensive that we are just limping by and limping by. And it's the goal of the finance department to work with the golf board and to work with the Golf Pro to really get that three to 6 months reserve and to be able to purchase those capital items to have that 5-year plan. But to do that, it does take fee increases. Now, if these are too high in this fiscal year, you know, we can look at bringing them back and reducing them down. Because I know that there has been some conversation about that. But the proposed fee increases that are before you today, bringing about $200,000 a year over the course of the entire year, which will allow them to put that into fund balance to buy that capital. Right now, they don't have those funds to buy that capital. So because their labor services have gone up significantly in this next year, it is looking at, we are just going to break even again without the fee increases. So it is something that's very important when we raise fees to look at the whole picture. And we are very aware of what's going on, and we know it does hurt everybody's pocketbook. But it is something that long-term, if we don't invest in the golf course, then it won't be having those users. Just kind of talk about, this is kind of a comparison of just from the last 2 years, as you can see, where some of the growth has happened between salaries, but also those labor services. Like I said, these are the temp workers, and so they've gone up significantly just in the last 2 years, and that's just the cost of labor because we're having to pay more, we're having to hire more people out there because there's so much busier. Same with repair and maintenance of the grounds and the machinery. So just additional information to show kind of why we're breaking even instead of really growing that fund balance. With library, and Lacey could probably talk to this, but library really does not update their fees more than once every 3 years. And so, and it is not a significant portion of the library's revenue. And they really just look at the cost for replacement items and try to make it to where it's not a burden on the community. I believe it's also, and Lacey could confirm this, it's also approved by the library board. These fees are before they come to city council. So with the Caldwell Planning and Zoning fees, the planning and zoning directors updated the format to make it definitely more accessible for residents and developers and make it easier to read. The fees are really based on staff time and actual costs for service. And they really look at the size of the project to allocate that staff time. That's why some of the fees you see have decreased instead of increased. And so we really go through and see what really makes sense for the fee that we're charging, not just do an automatic increase. The parking fees are only for code enforcement, not for downtown. I just wanted to call that out, just to make you guys aware. And then park and recreation fees. So for recreation fees, the reason why there would be a fee change is either a new class is provided, and so that cost is now a new fee. The increase in the uniform or activity cost just based off of we're passing that actual cost right on through, or the increase in the instructor cost. So right now for recreation, we pay 70% of the class fee is just passed straight on to the instructor. So that's not something that we can necessarily control. The instructor kind of sets that fee. For parks fees, some of the reasons why they were changed is the new equipment to help maintain the fields, the increase in the electricity costs and the employee costs, and then just increase in the repair and maintenance costs Fertilizer has gone up significantly in the last couple of years, sprinkler parts, and then bathroom maintenance has gone up as well. For pool fees, since we did not go based off of what we charged a few years ago, we kind of looked at this as brand new. But I will say with pool fees, they are set really low. If we were to charge what we actually needed to charge to break even, or if we were to charge just what we currently are, we would need 21,000 people to come through the pool in 98 days to actually break even, which is not really a possibility. So you can see where we tried to make this to where it wasn't cost prohibitive for families and residents of Caldwell, but still offset some of the staff costs. But it is not something that will break even at all, and it puts parks in the hole by about $100,000. So, and that essentially is paid by property tax and sales tax. For police department, they only had two small increases. One was just those copier costs that I talked about earlier, and then they have a wage that is for event costs, and that was just updated based off of the current wages that are being paid at CPD. So that is all I have on the fees. If you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Rayland. Appreciate that. Questions, Councilor Register?
Just first, I don't have the fees in front of me anymore, because they were, do you have a handout on what the fee changes were, or can we find them online?
They should be in the packet, depending on which resolution you're looking at.
Oh, okay. Good. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question while she's
Yes,
looking?
please.
On the golf course, the monthly expenses, why is there such a spread, 100,000 to 200,000? It just seems like it should be, somebody should be closer than that for expenses.
So do you mean the spread in increase in revenue?
No, it just says monthly expenses average from 100,000
Oh.
to 200,000.
So it depends on the time of year. So in the winter time, the costs are much less because they're not having all the temp staff, to where in the middle of summer, they have all the temp staff, and their expenses are a lot higher because they're paying, for those increased costs.
So is $138, I mean, what would be the monthly average then of all?
So when I looked at payroll runs about $63,000, and that's just payroll. That's just the minimal on payroll and benefits. So if it was just payroll, that would be it, but we know it's not just payroll. Usually the minimum, and this is usually during November, December, January, and February, it runs between 100 and 120,000 a month, is what those trends show me when looking at past years. And then when we start to add additional temp personnel, and then we add all the repair and maintenance and the water irrigation, all of that, then it creeps up, and then it starts to be 300,000 even during the summer months, some of the higher summer months. And even in September, because we do accrual, we're catching up all of those invoices that maybe take a month to process. So September is actually a higher month because we have a month, we're processing all those invoices that were for September.
So the $138 then doesn't include the repair and maintenance part of the cost, or the fertilizer, or the irrigation cost, or?
No, that's really just to operate it with personnel and, minimal staffing.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to be brief. My concern is general fund. My concern is budget. Recently, we've had a lot of discussions about general fund, about making sure we're not having to tax it more inappropriately. And I realize we're always talking about keeping our taxes down and not having to go for the full levy rate or go into foregone or all these other things. But then we turn around and we don't want to raise fees either, especially some of these areas where there are user choices. I think it would be unfortunate to eventually have to raise the levy rate across the entire city for areas that are user choices. And so I appreciate your presentation, and I think that the thought that you've put into this is what we've asked you to do when we brought you on as our finance director, what we're paying you to do. So thank you for your work in that.
Thank you. Counselor Allgood?
Yeah, one question's for you, and then one question for maybe planning and zoning or somebody over there. So I know we do a huge amount of records requests, and I think we probably have employees that's all they do. The fees that you have in there, are they coming anywhere near covering some of those costs?
You said for like public records requests?
Yeah, copying and,
No, because a lot of times we do electronic documentation, so that would be the charge if we were doing paper documentation.
gotcha.
And so, no, those fees aren't covering it at all.
And also maybe just to touch on that, Idaho code also restricts you, and Debbie could probably touch on this better, restricts you very tightly of what you can charge, and you have to provide so much free paper, so much free hours of service as well.
Yeah, I know it's a huge burden,
Yeah.
for a taxpayer burden to spend that time. And my second question is, and I'm not sure who can answer it, and I talked to Hallie about this previously. When we have what's the word? When we have somebody come in that's got a development plan or something, and we have a third party do our review for us because we don't have time, or I noticed previously that we don't charge for, it's pass through, we don't take a percentage or a charge. And my thinking is there should be some compensation for the staff time put into that. And there was discussion about putting some type of fee in this budget. So if someone came in with something and it was transferred to a third party, we would at least get some compensation. Has that been discussed?
I honestly don't remember it being discussed or even on the engineering fees. Rob, are you aware of that fee?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Mayor, Councilman Allgood, to answer your question, I don't think we addressed that fee or added it, and that's simply because our use of a third party to do plan review wasn't very common, and this last year we actually added a second plans examiner position in the engineering department, so they should be able to handle all plan review in-house, and so that process almost becomes obsolete unless there's some extreme circumstance. So we did not add that fee into the fee schedule.
Okay, I was seeing a number of them before, and that's why I had brought it, but this was months ago. So if we've rectified that problem, I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of anything else that Haley did differently towards the end. Nothing's ringing a bell, but my knowledge is that it has become obsolete, more or less.
Perfect, thank you.
Counselor Dittenber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple different questions and then a comment. With regards to the budget amendment that we made here a couple months ago, September, October, to make up for the shortfalls, can you just generally tell us where the shortfalls were that we made the amendments to fix?
So a lot of times, when we do a budget amendment, there's many reasons. One would be because of grants where we receive revenue. We don't budget for grants unless we know we've been awarded for them, so we would have revenue and then expenditures. However, if departments go over their budgets, then we would use fund balance if there's not additional revenue, which is common.
So the comment that I would make, and I agree completely with Councilor Williams, and that is, if we have a healthy and a reasonable user fee, there is less of a burden on our general account, on our general funds. And as this council knows, we are constantly talking about where we can cut money, where we can save money to relieve that burden on the taxpayers. So if a healthy user fee reduces the burden on our general fund, the converse is also true, and that is if we don't have healthy user fees, we socialize people's hobbies. We will socialize that across every taxpayer who does not use a specific service or a park or something across every single taxpayer. And that is correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, thank you. So having said that, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we.
I have some,
we,
I've
approve.
actually been waiting to make have some questions.
So he can make the motion, but then we'll get into discussion. So motions are available at any time. So we'll let him make it, but then you'll get to say your
Okay, well, I just had
So-
questions too. We went
I'll
down
go
the
ahead and
row,
make a
so-
motion that we approve resolutions number 315-24, 352-24, 353-24, 355-24, 356-24, 358-24, 360-24, 361-24 as printed.
Okay, so just, because there was a few of them in there that were not mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, as I was falling down, do you mind, just so everybody's clear on what the motion is, which ones that did not include?
357-24 was one of them.
Yep.
That wasn't included.
Is that correct? Was that your intent to leave some of those out, Counselor Dittenber, or?
My intent was to include all of them.
Okay, so if you wanted to, you could just make a motion for all the proposed fees.
All the resolutions, all the fees.
Okay, and that is as noted in old business item number 1, correct? Okay, so we have a motion for approval of old business item number 1. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, so we do have a second on that. So now open for discussion. Councilor Register, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so earlier in the evening, we heard Ms. Warwick talk about respecting each other and all that. And I literally, in the beginning of this, said that I was hoping that we were going to be able to pull out those 3, golf, airport, and parks, so that we could hear from the community. And instead of having that respect or even a chance to speak, we now have a motion that we're going to be forced to vote on. And so because of that, I'm a no, and it's not because I feel like the fees are wrong. It's not because I don't understand that we don't want to put a tax burden on everybody else. It's because of the process. And what I would have liked to have seen was when these fees came up that involved user-based fees, such as golf, the airport, parks, that we opened it up to where the people could come and talk and be heard, and then decisions could be made. I'm doing some really quick math as I'm sitting here, and it looks like the monthly fees on a lot of these are not that big of a jump. So it's not that I'm not in support of these things funding themselves or again, putting or spreading it out so that everybody has to pay, but I just want the community to be able to be heard. So in my opinion, it would have made more sense, and this probably doesn't have much to do with you in particular, Raylan, but it would have made more sense to bring these fees forward and have it be a public meeting or something where people could come and speak and be heard. And then we could have had a conversation about whether or not residents were offered maybe a discount for golf or airport or their parks and rec classes or whatever it is, and come up with some of those conversations. But instead, even though I asked that these be pulled out in the beginning, we are now forced into a vote for all of them. And because I believe that the community should have been involved in these discussions, that's why I'm voting no, because the motion has been forced, not because I don't believe, or not because I believe that we should be spreading this out amongst the community. I feel like it would be better to say no now, pull those out, or modify the motion to be able to have the community come back and speak, and then go from there. But if we have to do it this way, then that's where I'm going to stand. But one question that I do have is there a resident discount for any of these user-based ones?
So the only resident discount is for the pool. If that's something that you'd like me to bring back, when I bring back the other fees, I'd be happy to. Just let me know what departments you'd like me to bring it back for.
Well, if I'm looking at this correctly, if we're looking at first for the airport, is it $5.50 a month increased on the council rate and $1.88 on the other rate?
So those are total for the entire year? That's kind of,
Well, no, I know. So if it's $67 per year, then the person with the council rate will be paying $5.50 more a month?
yes,
Is that correct? Okay.
yes.
And then, the golf one is a little bit more confusing to me because I'm looking through some of these sheets that we had before, so it's not as clear. But it looks like it's going up about $100 a year for their fees.
For the annual membership, yes. I
And then
believe.
other fees, like cart rentals and stuff like that, also increasing.
Yes.
And then, do they have any kind of residential discount?
Not currently, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so I would have really liked to have had those conversations. I believe your answer for Parks and Rec was thorough enough I understand that, the reasons behind that. But I would have at least liked to hear from Airport and Golf.
Counselor Stoddick? I'm good. Oh, Counselor Doty?
Mr. Mayor, would Counselor Dittenberg be willing to amend his motion to exclude golf? I believe we heard from some comments tonight, there was a typo in there, as well as I went out and spoke with the golf board, thinking that it might be continued to a later date, to work with our golf pro, Roy, to maybe come up with a resolution or not, depending on what he wanted to do, but that's what I encouraged them to do, and then the motion was for everything, so if he's willing to remove golf, then I would be happy with that.
Very good. And so would that be looking to just continue that resolution to next council meeting for the golf? Would that be your intent?
Or workshop, or whatever we think's best, somewhere where we can hear the testimony from our folks in the community. One that concerns me is if there was a typo in the paper, well, that's not good, right? And then, as well as what I had told the board where I thought the direction was going, clearly, I didn't know what the vote would be. So if Counselor Dittenberg is willing to concede on the golf, then.
So just real quick, so would you be amenable to that friendly amendment to continue that?
Well, I was going to ask that airport be included in that because I was sort of under the impression that it didn't go before the airport board at the last meeting, did it? Did it when you had, like, before the last meeting or after that?
The last airport board meeting was on the 10th, and we discussed this as an action item and voted on it, and the board was okay with it.
So just to repeat, that was the last airport board meeting was on the 10th. I just want to get it on the record for people hearing. And it was presented to the board and they voted in support of the proposal.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So are you amenable to that amendment to continue all the resolution for golf and approving the rest?
I would be willing to amend my resolution to remove golf from the list.
And is the second amenable to that? Yes. Okay, very good. So we do have an amendment to that motion, which would approve those, continuing the resolution for golf to the next city council meeting and allowing for testimony in that regard. So any further discussion on that motion? Okay, then with that, I think we're going roll call tonight, or did it get up and working? Okay, so maybe it will work. So with that, the motion is for approval, as described. So a yes vote approves the resolutions exclusive for golf, which will be continued to the next city council meeting. And all votes are cast, so voting is closed, and that motion passes unanimously. So that approves the resolution for fees exclusive of golf, which we will have that at our next city council meeting on November 4th, I believe. Is that correct? Very good. And we will allow for some further discussion and for those. It is a legislative matter, but we allow for those that wish to testify on that to speak on that evening. Okay, that moves us into new business. Again, all new business items are considered action items. So our first one is a resolution authorizing the execution of an MOU with the Caldwell Night Rodeo for the construction of an announcer box at Caldwell Night Rodeo grounds for matching funds from the city not to exceed $1.6 million. So,
Sorry, I
thank you so
forgot
much.
about this one. So if you recall back in early spring, you passed a resolution with this approving the actual 1.6 million being allocated from the quiet zone to Caldwell Night Rodeo. This MOU just puts in place with Caldwell Night Rodeo an agreement that entailed to not exceed that 1.6 million. So is what it does and kind of designates who is supposed to do what. So.
Excellent, thank you so much. We do have Rob Vavold and Ed Lodge here this evening as well. Rob is the past president of the Caldwell Night Rodeo, and Ed has it been official yet, Ed? Or are you still in waiting? So he is now the official president for the 101st Caldwell Night Rodeo. So would love for them to come up and just speak a little bit, give us an update on where everything's at and going forward. And they both look extremely dapper tonight, so. If you could just state your name. Ed,
You
for the
bet,
record.
absolutely. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Caldwell City Council. My name is Edward Lodge. I am president of the Caldwell Night Rodeo, and I'm here with Rob Vavold, immediate past president of the rodeo. And it's an honor to be before you tonight to give you a quick little update on our capital campaign for a new announcers facility and skybox. And I can tell Mr. Mayor and members of the council, this process has been going very well. We have been actively meeting with members of the business community. They are very enthusiastic about what we're doing here in this community, what we're doing for the sport of rodeo, and what we're doing for the greater economic development of Caldwell. We recently engaged in a economic study with the University of Idaho and found that the Caldwell Night Rodeo brings in, not including what we generate here in the community, but bringing in about $8 million a year. And we are excited to, with this new project, to build a facility that will do more than just the Caldwell Night Rodeo, but bring in other Western lifestyle events, other events that will continue to build upon that incredible opportunity to bring more money and opportunities to the city of Caldwell. We have sat down with various members of the community. I can report that we have received a $1 million contribution from the J.R. Simplot Company and a $1 million contribution from D&B Supply. We are waiting to hear from others, and we'll be meeting with others. But as this process goes on, we look forward to coming in and visiting with each and every one of you to talk about the progress we're making, work with you because we have a phenomenal asset in the Caldwell Night Rodeo. We are one of the top 5 outdoor rodeos in the nation, along with Pendleton and Cheyenne, and we're very proud of what we get to do here in our community each year, and we look forward to doing more. So with that, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, Rob and I would stand for any questions that you may have.
Perfect, thank you so much. Any questions?
It's a motion.
Okay, very good, so we'll get right to it. Oh, okay, yes, Councilor Hogan.
Yeah, Mr. President, one of the things you said is just really important to me, and I just hope you guys, we really, really want updates, see how things are going. When you get elevations, I would love to see elevations, see what it's going to look like. But the important thing, we see this a lot in our urban renewal side and things. As you progress and get closer, if you would stop in and give us some updates, it would be really appreciated.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Councilor, we would relish that opportunity. And in fact, coming out to the rodeo grounds, seeing the process, asking those questions, we feel that's very important as we are partners, and we would really appreciate that kind of input. And so we look forward to that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Councilor Doty.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate you guys being here tonight. I think when we talk about return on investment, this is a great way to go. The $8 million is great and doesn't include what we do here locally. So I'll make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the Caldwell Night Rodeo for the construction of the announcer's box at the grounds for matching funds not to exceed $1.6 million.
Very good. We have a second. So it's a motion from Councilor Doty and a second from Councilor Stoddick for approval of this resolution. Any discussion on that motion? Councilor Dittenberg?
I just had one question. So what's the total cost of the project? You've already got commitments of $2 million. You're going to soon here probably have a commitment of another $1.6 million. So what's the total cost of the project, and where are you at in your capital campaign?
You bet. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so we have estimated, is it 5.6? 5.6 million total cost. And so we have, Councilor, during this capital campaign, when we go and visit with our community partners, our business leaders, we don't immediately go out and ask for money with our hand out. We talk about the community, we talk about what's going on in Caldwell, and they have offered, without us asking for money, we have a commitment for around $3 million. So we're excited about and very, we're just humbled by what we've received. For we're almost there, and I have every confidence in the world that we can get to that amount here in this year, in 2025, coming up, 2025.
Mr. Mayor, one more question.
Yeah.
So as council, we always talk about what if the worst-case scenario happens and we get no money? And so if you've got a $3.6 million commitment, or maybe here in just a couple of minutes have that, do you have a $3.6 million project that you complete, or is it an all or nothing?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it is not an all or nothing. I mean, there are certainly things that we can do with various amounts of money. Of course, we're very enthusiastic about what we can do, but certainly, Counselor, we can modify what we're looking at, but I guarantee you, we're going to be working very hard to get that full amount. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion or questions? Okay, so the motion is for approval, and we will pull that up right now. So with that, voting is open at this time. And all votes are cast, the voting is closed, and that passes unanimously. So there's the other 1.6. Well, thank you, really, all that you and the entire board do. I know Rob had his hands full with the 100th year this last year, and you will as well as we move forward. So we can't say enough great things about the rodeo, about each and every one of you and the entire board. So please pass on our thank you to them on everything they do. So thanks for being here. Yep. Okay, so that moves us into action item number 2 under new business. This is a public hearing quasi judicial for case number ANN 24-9, annexation. And April, are you presenting?
Good evening, Mayor Wagner and City Council members. My name is April Cabello, City Planner, 205 South 6th Avenue. Before you tonight is the Maverick annexation, case number ANN 24-000009. The application is for annexation. Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to make sure it was on there. The application is for annexation of parcel R34649-011A0 from county with zoning designation of C3 Service Commercial. The applicant has proposed using the subject site and surrounding parcels for a convenience store with fuel cells, which is a directly permitted use in the proposed zone and is not part of the land use application. Let me go to slide 2. This one. Thank you. The subject site location is located on the south side of Green Road, approximately 833 feet east of where Green Road intersects with Highway 2026 in Caldwell, Idaho. The subject site has frontage along Green Road and exists within the county jurisdiction. Conditions surrounding the site. The project site is currently surrounded by vacant land in the county to the north, a trailer repair shop in the city of Caldwell to the south, and the West Canyon Canal in the city of Caldwell to the east, and vacant land in the city of Caldwell to the west. Background and history of the site. The subject site is adjacent to multiple parcels that were part of an application for comprehensive plan future land use map amendment from industrial to commercial service, and an application for annexation of 33 properties with the zoning designation of C3 that was proposed that was approved by City Council in February of 2023. The subject parcel was not part of that annexation. The zoning and land use analysis. The request consists of the applicant's proposal for annexation for the county, from county with a zoning designation of C3 Service Commercial. The applicant is requesting to utilize an adjacent abutting land use designation of commercial and service instead of the current comprehensive plan land use designation of industrial, which is permitted by section 10-01-09 of the Caldwell City Code. The applicant has proposed to use the site for a convenience store with fuel cells, which is a directly permitted use in the proposed zone and is not part of this land use application. The comp plan analysis, the subject site is designated as industrial on the comprehensive plan map, but the applicant is requesting to utilize the adjacent abutting land use designation of commercial and service instead of the current comprehensive plan land use designation of industrial, which is permitted by the section of code 10-0109. The purpose of the service commercial zone is to provide areas by zoning procedures in accordance with the comprehensive plan that provide suitable areas where activities of service nature, which are more intensive in character than in other commercial zones and which may be semi-industrial in character, may be carried out in conjunction with the policies of the comprehensive plan. The subject site is surrounded by service and commercial and industrial. It's industrial to the north, commercial service to the south, east, and west. Staff review and analysis, the proposed zoning from county to C3 service commercial is permitted as per code 10-01-09. The applicant again is proposing to annex this parcel, which will allow the adjacent parcels to have singular zoning for intended 5,967 square foot convenience store use with fuel dispenser and fuel canopies, which is a directly permitted use in the zone, but is not part of this annexation application. The application this is an application for annexation only. The project will be reviewed for compliance at the time of development proposal. Public hearing notifications, all agencies were notified. ITD did respond and they have no objection to the annexation. They did note that future development of this parcel will require submittal of trip generations to ITD and may require a TIS. City of Nampa, they had no comments or concerns. City Engineering Department, there was no comment or concerns. Fire stated that the project can be approved and provided general conditions of approval, which are in the staff report. City of Caldwell Police, no objections, and there was no public comments received. Site-specific concerns or conditions. In reviewing the proposed application for annexation, it appears that a parcel consolidation would need to be finalized prior to development and building permit submittal. The review of the application is for annexation only and is in no way a review or comments for the development or plans submitted with the annexation application. Staff summary. Staff feels that the request is consistent with the surrounding zones. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Great, thank you so much, April, very well done. Any questions? Councilor Stoddard?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Councilor Doty?
Just one, and I may have missed it. Do we know when they anticipate actually building it, though? Did they give any?
Because this is for just the annexation,
Right.
it was not
That was
noted.
not discussed. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a question about another discrepancy, and I think I know what the answer is, but in some of our packet, it refers to one street. In another part of our packet, it refers to another. The applicant refers to it as Spring Lake Drive and Highway 26. We're referring to it as something else, Green Road. I just don't like the discrepancies in our our packet, which is it, and are we clear, is everybody clear on?
It is Green Road is the frontage that subject site parcel itself has.
Okay.
And I think where some of the confusion may be is, because this is just one parcel of a larger development, so where it'll be coming in, I don't know if you can see on my screen, it'll probably be Spring Lake Drive, but this little piece that wasn't annexed with the other parts fronts Green Road. So that may be
Correct.
where the confusion is I think that gas station probably be on Spring Lake Road, but Green Road is what actually abuts this parcel.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why I was asking, thank you, Mr. Mayor, because in the master land use application in our packet, with the parcel site, the general location site says Spring Lake Drive and Highway 26, and so I just prefer that everything say the same thing, rather than we get things with different, I'm not opposed to the project, or to the, to the annexation necessarily, I just am concerned when everything doesn't match, it could lead to other concerns later. And so that's, I was asking where Spring Lake Drive was and whether or not this was the same thing here. So that was my concern, Mr. Mayor.
Good. Counselor Allgood?
Yeah, where's the touch to city limits on this? Where does it?
It's the adjacent parcel to both two sides, to just below it. I don't know if we have a map.
Okay,
So it has touch on two sides.
touch on two sides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, April, appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we do have one person signed up for this matter in favor. There's nobody signed up in opposition or neutral, so Scott Hurt, I believe is the last name.
Yeah.
So if you could please state your name and address for the record, and then,
Scott Hurt, 150 East Parkway Drive, Boise, Idaho.
excellent, and then you'll be given 10 minutes for your testimony if you need that all. And
It
there's
is.
already one question that's kind of come up that I'm guessing you can address.
I am not sure, but I was asked to be here on behalf of Maverick. I'm their broker on this transaction. And they gave me a quick little phone call and said, hey, can you be there for us? So here I am. I don't know if I'm going to be able to formally address because the details that I have are very limited because this is a process and the annexation is step one. So I'm here for the annexation. So if there's any questions in
Do you,
regards.
do you know when, I know there was that question came up, what's the timeline? Do you know when they plan on starting construction?
I do not, because they're gonna have to go through the city, the planning and zoning. There's a lot of hurdles that they need, plus third-party reports, et cetera. So that time is probably gonna be better suited to talking to one of the engineers within Maverick.
Okay. Any questions from council? Okay, very good. Okay, well, thank you for being here. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. So, okay, very good. So I stand for a motion to close the public testimony portion of this hearing.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. So this puts it into deliberation or any motions. And again, staff is available if you do have any questions. I don't know if they've had additional discussion possibly with Maverick. They may know a timeline better, but if you do have any questions. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may
Yes.
I ask staff a question?
Yes, you may.
My question is, why are we addressing this annexation separate from the project itself? Normally, it's one approval, where we approve the annexation and the project. And I suppose I'm not deeply concerned about it because of where it's at. It's coming eventually anyway, but I'm always a little concerned if we annex something and then this doesn't go through, then we gotta go through a process of de-annexing if we wanna do that, or I'm just wondering, why are we doing this differently this time on this annexation from what we more regularly do? Let me put it that way.
Robin?
Mayor and councilors, this project is just a little bit different in the way that once they annex into the city, the gas station that they're going to be proposing out there is a permitted use. So it doesn't require land use entitlements for them. So once they're annexed, they can just submit for building permits. They don't have anything else that they need to do. So it's a little bit different. Usually when you see them packaged together, it's because the use itself also needs approval coming forward, like a subdivision plat or a special use permit, where this one does not require that.
Okay. Any other questions? Counselor Allgood.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would sponsor bill number 58, ordinance number 3619.
So first, yeah, so we do need a approval of the annexation, and then we can get right into
Oh,
the,
that's where I was going, I
Yep.
was just ahead of myself.
it's not bad to be ahead, so.
There we go. Guess I should be up.
Yep.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, the mayor and city council hereby orders that case number ANN 24-9 is hereby approved to include the conditions of approval as outlined within the staff report and the zoning map amendment.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
So it's a motion from Counselor Allgood with a second from Counselor Dintber for approval of annexation, case number ANN 24-9. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, with that, voting is open at this time. And all votes are cast, the voting is closed, and that motion passes unanimously. And I'd stand for motion to close this public hearing item. And a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. That motion passes. Now it moves us into the next one, so.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Counselor Allgood.
I move to approve the passage of bill number 58, ordinance number 3619, with a request to move first passage by title only and approve the summary for publication.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
So it's a motion from Counselor Allgood and a second from Counselor Williams for adoption passage of bill number 58, ordinance number 3619 by title only, and set to approve the summary for publication. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, with that, voting is open for that item. And all votes are cast, so voting is closed, and that passes unanimously as well. That'll move us into new business item number 4. Consider resolution number 362-24. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you coming. Let them know you did a great job, so.
Let them know that.
Yes, we will. So this is authorization, the submittal of the proposed Site A, Caldwell Urban Renewal Area Plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review and recommendations pursuant to Idaho Code. Mr. Waterman. It is good to see you, by the way, this evening.
You as well. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Good to see all of you. So this is the next step in the process for the Site A Caldwell Urban Renewal project area. You had this particular project area before you in the form of a eligibility study and a finding that the area was deteriorated or deteriorating. The Urban Renewal Agency itself has seen the proposed plan and recommended it to you. It stops here briefly on its way to Planning and Zoning. Planning and Zoning, if this is approved tonight, will then review it for conformity with the general plan of development of the city of Caldwell, which is to say the comprehensive plan. At the point that Planning and Zoning has a recommendation or comments on the plan, it will return to you for a formal public hearing on the plan, which will have 30 days notice prior to it gets published in the paper, has an opportunity for public comment. And that would be the point in time when this body would consider actually approving the plan. Tonight, it's just making its way through the body to obtain your approval that Planning and Zoning take it up and consider whether or not it conforms with the general plan for development for the city. If you go to page 514 in your packet, that's the map that shows the meets and bounds of the proposed project area. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's on Arthur and Kimball. It's the eastern corner there, which consists of a couple lots owned by the agency, a lot owned by Mr. Senga, and a salon there, who's the owner of which I'm spacing on the name of. But the agency and the other properties as well are all on board with the proposed plan. This property is still within the ownership of the agency. And when the urban renewal law was adopted, well, the law that existed as of the time that Caldwell's primary first urban renewal plan was adopted did not have strict requirements for plan language concerning the retention or disposition of property at the termination of the plan. And so consequently, this piece of property is still owned by the agency, even though that plan itself has terminated. the desire is to have it administered in an orderly and reasonable way, and it seemed appropriate to have a plan in place to serve as the framework for any sort of RFP associated with the property and subsequent development of it. So that's what this plan is. It's simply for that property. The feasibility study for this was done by Ray Lynn, which is much appreciated. It anticipated approximately $300,000 in revenue over its 20 years. The project list consists of 2 blocks, a sort of primary objective project list dealing with underground power and building panel upgrades, and then some second priority improvements in terms of streetscapes and things like that in the event that there's additional revenue. More than anticipated in the feasibility study. Those feasibility studies are generally conservative, and Raylan did a good job with that. But those are there as well. Not terribly exciting. It's last time there was an urban renewal project proposed. It was many acres, spanning lots of area. Harder to predict what may or may not be done in an area of that size. Here, it's relatively simple. It provides a framework for the disposition of the property through an RFP. Provides some, albeit maybe contextually minimal support for some public infrastructure. And then when it accomplishes those objectives, it would sunset, whether that be at year 20 or sometime before then. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Councilor Doty?
No questions, just comment. Yes, this is site-specific, though it does include a couple of lots, which I often support in urban renewal because it's very specific as to what we want done on this lot. It's not vague like a lot of urban renewal of what we're trying to get accomplished, as well as if the project is built, then of course it'll pay for these projects. Short of that, it would take years to pay for. So it helps ensure that something will be built on that piece of land to help pay for these very specific items. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. Any other questions or discussion or any motions?
Mr. Mayor, I just have a comment, if I could. We've talked about this, and I was well aware of the first priority improvements. The second priority improvements are a little more of a concern to me. This is a unique and unusual urban renewal request for a lot of reasons, but what is our I don't even know how to phrase this question. What is our expectation of what will be included in this urban renewal project? Is it all of the above here, or is it the first priority improvements? What are we talking about in those second priority improvements, I think is where I'm going. Is that intended to be a part of this?
So Mayor, Councilor Williams, are you asking, if you have specific questions about what, for example, lighting would be, I would refer to Rob, he can provide better commentary, it would be to keep that area in keeping with the streetscape surrounding it, per whatever the standards are that are applicable to that. In terms of the prioritization of the projects, it's a requirement of urban renewal planning that you articulate any project that you're going to expend money on. And then also that the projects be feasible. When you have, and that we do all of that with a standard applicable to it that is defined in the code as reasonable certainty. And so without illumination or illustration elsewhere to help shed light on exactly what that means, the approach is we do a feasibility study that takes a reasonable and conservative estimate of what the anticipated revenue would be, and then we have a project list that has a priority section for those projects which we are very certain there'll be funding for, and then a second priority section which is those projects we are less certain that there'll be funding for, but which still appear to be reasonably feasible in the context of the plan. So the second priority items are items that would be constructed with urban renewal funding if it was available, but they are as adopted by this body and by the agency designated from the outset as being second priority, things that would come only if there was an opportunity to do them later in the plan.
And maybe that's my question, Mr. Waterman, because this is double really what I was expecting it to be before I got the packet and read through it. In that sense of I knew we were limiting it, I knew we were being site-specific to what we were going to allow on it. And so what that means to me is it's just longer before this sunsets and this is paid back. Because as it continues, we'll get into those secondary improvements, and so an already complicated, new urban renewal project is further complicated in my mind. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Mayor, Councilor Williams, I don't know if that was a question, that's certainly I have no objection to holding that position. I don't anticipate that this would present any actual practical administration issues. It is true that whatever the project list is, if there is more dollars to spend on the projects, then the plan will last longer if you do those projects. And that's all dictated by revenue received. The alternative, of course, is that, well, anyway, I'll stop with that.
Councilor Register.
I don't really have a question as much as I have a comment. I was able to do a little bit more research into this since our last meeting where we voted for this, and I still have, I guess now after doing some research into it, I have some concerns that sort of match what Councilor Williams is talking about. So is this something that has to be voted on tonight?
This item of sending it to planning and zoning for, Mayor, Councilor Register, the item of sending it to planning and zoning does not have to be voted on tonight. This item, the plan itself will come back to this body for final approval at that final hearing. There needs to be enough time for planning and zoning to meet and review this plan for its conformity with the comprehensive plan and return recommendations back to council in time to have the final hearing. So an approval tonight simply sends this to planning and zoning for their review. It doesn't approve the plan itself.
But the first thing that we voted on already was to create this urban renewal, so is that done?
So, Mayor, Council Register, no, not quite. The first thing you voted on was to declare that the area was appropriate for urban renewal. It also did not bind you to a final decision on the plan.
Right, so I'm not sure that we had all the information that we should have had when we voted on that. So if we vote on this tonight to send it to planning and zoning, we're still not locked into an urban renewal district there?
That's correct.
So what does it do once it goes to planning and zoning?
So, Mayor, Council Register, planning and zoning is tasked under the urban renewal law to review a proposed plan for whether or not it conforms to the general plan of development for the city of Caldwell, which is not defined explicitly in that particular section of the code, and was thereafter, the Local Land Use Planning Act made it more explicit that that particular plan would be the comprehensive plan. So they'll do a comp plan analysis, the same a comp plan, and that way a comp plan analysis would be done for an annexation or a PUD, and then they'll send their recommendations back to the city council.
And then we vote on the final plan, but right now we are not locked into a new urban renewal.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other additional questions or any motions? Yes, Councilor Doty.
Move to approve resolution number 362-24, authorizing the submittal of the proposed Caldwell Urban Renewal Site A plan to be recommended to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their review.
Second.
So we have a motion from Councilor Doty, and a second from Councilor Static for approval of this resolution, which again just basically sends this to Planning and Zoning Commission for their review and recommendation, which will then come back to City Council. Any discussion on that motion? Yes.
When it comes back to council, will it be a public hearing?
Mayor, Council Register, yes, that will be a public hearing. The timeline, I believe it's a 30-day minimum notice requirement for that hearing, and so the public should have ample opportunity to be made aware of it as well.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Did you have a question on it?
Just a remark, I think that's
Okay.
appropriate at this
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
I would be for it except for the secondary priority improvements. I'm not happy with that. The way it's coming to us is not what I expected.
Very good. Okay, with that, voting is open at this time. All votes are cast, so voting is closed, and that motion passes with 4 in favor and 2 in opposition. Council Register and Council Williams did vote no, with the other 4 council members voting yes. So that moves us on to item number 5 under new business. And actually, if we could tackle 5 and 6 at the same time to save you from having to walk up there twice or wait up there. So 5 is for a resolution for the implementation of a Caldwell purchasing card policy and procedures, and then number 6 is essentially the same, but for a travel policy. So if you want to just cover them both, we'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
So, finance is implemented, we're about to roll out the P cards, and so before we did that, we wanted to, get the P card, policy approved. This really details out what the program's going to do, how people would use the cards, and what type of training they, would be supposed to go to, and, kind of the process. In addition, like with P cards, it'll be an accountability. Each person is accountable for their own P card. In the first rollout, we're rolling out about 71 P cards. So that's what the P card policy is. For the travel policy, the city's travel policy has not been updated recently, and so Rochelle and I worked together to really roll out this policy. It really sets into process like what's appropriate for city travel expenditures, what's not, and kind of the process, looking at, making sure there's that fiscal responsibility that's in the forefront of all travel purchases, because travel can be very expensive, and making sure that it is approved ahead of time and then reconciled after the fact, so that we know that, if travel is overspent, that we can kind of just shut it down and not go over that budget line item unless it's really expedient. So I'll stand for any questions.
Very good, thank you so much. Questions? Counselor Allgood.
Yeah, Raylene, on the P card policy, I'm looking under eligibility, and it lists administrative and executive decisions, facility managers and superintendents, travel planners and project managers. And I was just curious what the discussion has been with emergency services, because many occasions it's like midnight and something's needed or whatever. What's the plan for emergency services?
So we worked with each department to really figure out who needed cards and who was going to be the primary. I can't recall off the top of my head who we designated or how many we designated for police and fire. But we would, if they needed additional ones, then we would hand them out as well. But the P cards are really there for, we're not going to lock down and say, no, you can't use it. There's just if we needed an override, they would just call us or call Rex, that's police chief, or the deputy chief, who would then call us to get that override taken care of. So there's a process in place to do that as well.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so just confirming, the police chief or the fire chief can designate people down their organizational chart that they feel would need these cards in the future?
That is correct. So it's not just high-level cards. We've designated people that, who would be the main point of contact for purchasing, main point of contact for travel, or if you do travel a lot, you would have your own card, and we can change those. So the nice thing about P cards is that we can change the limit, at any time. We can override it for one time. We can make it ongoing just with documentation. So there's a lot of flexibility within the cards to each department. So it's not limited by department. And we really set up profiles for police and fire separate than we did for streets, obviously, because they have different type of spending for police and fire than they do for streets. And so we looked at the prior spending, what they currently spend on, and tried to, in the first couple months of rollout, there's going to be a little hiccups, but we're not shutting off the old cards right away either. So there'll be this spend out period where, we can work to make sure that these issues are worked out in a timely manner and get them fixed. And specifically in police, the accounting specialist that was approved in the budget that we're working on hiring right now, that person would be a direct admin for finance that would be able to assist with any of the police cards. So it's not just having to come over to finance. For certain departments, we will allocate someone in that department that would be the admin for the P card as well.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Counselor Doty?
Mr. Mayor, I'm 100% in support of these. In fact, I think every employee should probably have a P card. It certainly starts a trail of accountability, and you have to produce the receipts and say why you spent the money and what you spent it on and how it supports the mission. So I'm in support of this wholeheartedly.
Very good, thank you. Counselor Denver?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. So I think it's a well-written policy. I do have one question. I noticed that it's through Visa, a purchasing card. So this acts as a credit card rather than a debit card. And the only reason I ask is, isn't there more protections when it's a credit card rather than a debit card?
Yeah, so yes, it is a credit card, but it's not tied, so our previous credit cards were tied to the employee. These are not specifically tied on like the employee's credit card is tied to the city. So, but it has the employee's name on it and it's specific to that employee, so they have to reconcile it every single month as well. But if there is fraud, the bank has that policy in place that we can get those funds reimbursed.
Okay, very good. Do we have any motions? And whoever does make the motion, if you could include both of the resolutions, that would be appreciated.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Counselor Doty?
I move to approve the resolution number 363-24 and 364-24, accepting and authorizing the implementation of the City of Caldwell purchasing card policy and procedures and the City of Caldwell travel policy as printed.
Very good. Do we have a second? Second. So motion from Counselor Doty with a second from Counselor Stodic for adoption approval of resolutions 363-24 and 364-24. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, with that, then,
Mr. Mayor, is this only for one, though? Are we going to do it twice, or you?
so yeah, we can pull them up right after the other. So this will be the one for the 363, the purchasing card policy, the P card policy. Yeah, Counselor registers hasn't, there we go. All votes have been cast, so voting is closed, and that passes unanimously. And that'll move us right into the next one, the 364-24 for the travel policy, and voting is open on that as well. And all votes are cast, so voting is closed on that one, and that passes unanimously as well. That moves us into the finance report.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Allgood.
I move that accounts payable in the amount of $4,729,422.53, represented by check numbers 181-487 through 181-824, and payroll for the amount of $776,984.98, represented by check numbers 39653 through 39672, and direct deposits be accepted, payments approved, and vouchers filed in the office of the city clerk.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's a motion from Counselor Allgood and a second from Counselor Doty for acceptance of the finance report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. So that moves us into some items of discussion from staff. So we appreciate staff being here to present on this. Oh, that's right. Is that number 19? Okay, yes, I apologize on that. So item number 19 from consent calendar was moved down. So this is approved resolution authorizing the execution of a reimbursement agreement with UP Railroad for the Railroad Quiet Zone review and coordination in an estimated amount of $60,000. Bruce was getting lonely back there. Thought I'd forgot about him. So want to give you your opportunity. So it's all you, sir.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council, and thank you, Debbie. I'm here to either give an update or answer questions, so what's your pleasure?
Very good. Well, let's just jump right into the questions. That work, Councilor Doty?
Mr. Mayor, I pulled this. So, one, what is the agreement for? You and I have talked previously, and you thought maybe the project's slated for several $1 million. We were given the assurance that the county we'd have a discussion with the county to donate, help us fund that in $1 million. That conversation still hasn't happened. I believe the mayor directed Rob to do it at the last time this came up, and they still have had no contact from anyone at the city. So that money is not allotted to us and probably will not be coming. And so, based on our conversation, you thought that maybe you'd researched enough to find a cheaper method to accomplish this. And so, what you've told me, I would just like you to tell the rest of the council.
Absolutely. So originally, the thought was that we were going to have to make a lot of equipment investments in the railroad to do this quiet zone. As an example, there's single gates at each railroad crossing now, and one of the thoughts was that we'd have to do these quad gates where they both come down. You have to install double the number of gates at each crossing, so that when the gates are down, a car can't physically get through there. Well, there are other much cheaper options. One is just to put a median down the road so that a car, again, can't cross that median to get around the gates. Way cheaper. So we've also found out that a lot of the equipment that the previous consultant who did some preliminary work for the city on this thought that we were going to have to upgrade a lot of equipment for the railroad. It does not look like we're going to have to do that. So the costs that we thought were going to be several million now are probably more in the $500,000 range, more or less. Tonight, this agreement to move forward, well, let me back up real quick. So what we've done so far is we've done preliminary design in-house to come up with drawings to show the railroad, which I've showed them, and while they can't give the formal thumbs up, they've told me that they look good, what we've proposed. Now we actually have to have them all come for a diagnostic meeting on site. They're going to be flying in from different states. They want money to do that. They want travel expenses and that type of thing and reviewing. So this agreement tonight, which is for up to $60,000, is for them to go through the whole review process, which includes flying in for the diagnostic, reviewing all the paperwork, all the designs. And if I could just address your comment about the county on the 12th Avenue crossing, that is one that looks like it's going to be very simple. It's just going to be two medians. My guess is that the cost of that's going to be, I don't want to, don't hold me, but $30,000 maybe. So it won't be a huge investment. And at the point that we get the design approval from the railroad, that's when we would finalize our costs and then bring a proposal over to the county for their share of that. So tonight, this agreement for $60,000 is again just to allow the railroad to do their review and hopefully give us approvals.
Right, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And that's my issue was, I don't think all of council had heard about your solution to the multi-million-dollar problem. And so it's good that everyone has heard it now from you, and hopefully the council will decide what they want to do if they want to go forward, since it should be a lot cheaper. Based on the conversations, you've heard it earlier about some finances, I'm not so sure I'd still go through with the one that would be $2-3 million. However, if we're confident it's going to be much less than that, then I may be more in support of doing that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Williams?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mills, thank you. I appreciate hearing this. It's, so much of it is new, and again, you get the packet and you go, wow, this is completely different than everything we've heard. And so thank you for coming tonight and explaining it to us. I'm still very curious, Mr. Mayor, simply because you told us that the county told you they would. So where's the miscommunication? Who told you that, and why are we now hearing something different, that they're not participating in this? Thankfully, it's a lot less, but this council was told something. I'm curious where the disconnect is between what we were told and what now we're being told.
Yeah, so on that, so it was told that they had shown interest, never that they had guaranteed, voted, talked about that, so that they, in initial discussions that we'd had, this had been a year or two ago, with some staff at the county, where they said they thought there would be an interest from the commissioners in regards to that. And so it was never presented that they had approved it or that they were fully on board, just that it was, they understood from some staff members, they thought the council or the commission would be interested in participating, at least in that crossing, the 12th Avenue one. And as we've moved down the road and kind of seen, you know, we really appreciate Mr. Mills, his expertise on this, showing that it's going to be much less expensive to do these, especially the 12th Avenue in regards to that, just have not pursued that option just because of the highly reduced cost in that regards. Bruce, did you have?
And if I could just add, I think it's always meant that we would have firm costs and take those to the county and say, here's what the costs are going to be and here's what we want you to contribute. And we haven't gotten to that point yet, but those costs are going to be way less than what we anticipated.
And again, thank you for your work. I just think my decision to divert funds from this project to another were based on an assurance I thought I had. I guess I'm gonna have to pay closer attention because the whole reason to divert those funds was because we had some assurance that we weren't going to need all of them. Thankful for Mr. Mills' work and his expertise, now we don't.
Councilor Allgood?
Yeah, Bruce, don't run off yet, please.
Sure.
And again, thank you for the work you've done. This is pretty exciting. I'm just curious, what does a median look like downtown, Kimball, Ninth? Can you give me a rough idea what a median in the middle of the road would look like?
Yes, it would be about 2 foot wide, curb on each side, just a raised median with asphalt or concrete in the middle of it. And from the railroad tracks, it has to go back a minimum of 60 feet, between 60 and 100 feet, depending on which location we're at. So that's on each side of the tracks. So it'll just be so that when a car's pulling up and the gate is down in front of them, they won't be able to turn left and go around the gate because now we're not going to be blowing the horns, and so it wouldn't be as safe. So the median's just going to stop people from being able to turn left and go around the gate.
Gotcha. That sounds, I'm assuming we might have to widen the roads a little bit in some places?
It's possible, although if we split it down the center with 2 feet, I don't really think we're going to have to widen the road. I think there's still plenty of width on each of these different 7 crossings that we won't have to widen the road.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Councilor Register?
Hello. I have some questions that they're probably more for the mayor. Or I don't know. I'm a little bit confused. I thought we weren't doing this project anymore.
So we are, or that's the plan. I know that some money was diverted from this project to Caldwell Night Rodeo, which was approved earlier tonight. We still had originally, if I remember right, 4.6 million was the original estimate, if I remember correct, going off of numbers we gotten several years ago and looking at the consultants' reports in that regards. And then we felt that it was going to be a bit less than that, and so 1.6 million of that diverted, which left 3 million. And if my numbers are off, I apologize, but I think I'm pretty close in that regards. But the plan was still to move forward with it, and really appreciate Mr. Mills coming in. And as you remember, that the initial study was going to be several $100,000, maybe even over $500,000, if I remember correct. And then Bruce said, well, hey, I can do that in-house. So we brought that in-house with Mr. Mills' expertise to do that, and saved us a significant amount of money doing it ourselves. And then also finding out the other ways that we could do it to save us money. So the intent has always been there to do it. There was some money diverted, but the understanding originally was we could do it for that lesser amount, and then it's gotten even better as Mr. Mills has gotten into it. But it's always been the intent to continue forward with the Quiet Zone.
And just to clarify, for this year's budget, 2025, there's $100,000 budgeted to go through this process of preliminary design and approvals from the railroad. So this is, we think we're only going to need to spend the $60,000 of that $100,000 this year.
So that brings me to a question to finance then. If we were looking for places in the budget to pull money out of for employee retention, salaries, anything like that, would this be one of those things where we could do that, or no?
So in fiscal year '24, we budgeted 4.1 million. Obviously, we haven't spent any of that, and the 1.6 million got diverted. So the remaining balance of that will stay in general fund until it's allocated to another project. So it'll stay in that fund balance. It was not part of the fiscal '25 budget when I proposed the budget to you.
So can we take money from it to pay salaries?
So it's a one-time expense, it's a one-time, and so I would not recommend using it for salaries because salaries are ongoing. could use it for bonuses, but not for salaries, is my recommendation. I mean, you could always use it, but it will, I mean, once the money's gone, we would have to come up with an ongoing funding source or have to do holdbacks or something like that, which we would not want to do.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Denber?
Bruce, I have a question for you, if you're still willing to field some questions.
Yes, sir.
So with regard to the quiet zones, I think we're talking about 3 roads, if I'm not mistaken, 5th, Kimball, and 12th, are the main ones, if I'm not mistaken. And you're talking about a 60-foot median on both sides of the track. Would any of those medians interfere with a left-hand turn into a parking lot or a business or anything?
Mr. Mayor and Councilman Ditberg, yes, they will. One of the things the railroad requires is that anything within 60 feet has to be closed off. So some of those entrances into the parking lots, we will have to probably divert a short distance down the alley and turn into the parking lot rather than going directly into the street. They'll be right in, right out, but they will not be able to be a full access. So there are a few things like that that we'll have to change. That's to do it, if you will, on the cheap. If we wanted to go back and do the $500,000 gates, we could keep those parking lots exactly as they are today, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Counselor Denber?
And we're only dealing with those 3 roads,
Oh,
right?
I'm sorry.
We're abandoning 4th.
We are abandoning 4th Avenue. We actually are talking about 7 crossings. 5th, Kimball, 9th, 12th, 21st, Linden, and Eustic. Essentially, all the crossings in the city would be in with this quiet zone.
Okay, very good. There's no further discussion. Is there any motions? Counselor Allgood?
Let me make sure I get the right one here before I go. Well, they don't have one for this one. Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that we approve up to $60,000 for the execution of a review and coordination with Union Pacific for a quiet zone.
Very good. Do we have a second? It's a motion from Counselor Allgood and a second from Counselor Dentenberg for approval of this resolution. Any discussion on that motion? Very good. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? Or actually, oh, sorry, I didn't know that we had it, so. Very good. So with that, voting is open at this time. Even the items we poll, they still have ready to go. Way to go. Impressed. Okay, all votes are cast, so voting is closed, and that passes with 5 in favor and 1 in opposition. Is that correct, Councilor Stoddard? Yeah. Okay, so that moves us into, now it moves us into discussion items from staff. So first item on this is the discussion regarding the letter of intent that you all received earlier this week in regards, or sorry, last week, end of last week, regarding the proposed hotel at 104 North 21st Avenue. Again, this is just discussion this evening. This is not listed as an action item. And so discussion in regards to this to get some feedback with the hope of bringing it back as an action item in the near future for council. So, Mr. Jenkins, do you mind kicking us off and kind of going over it, and then I'm sure there'll be some questions from council.
Okay, good evening. Good to be in front of you all this evening. Thank you for your time in advance. Excited to talk about this hotel development opportunity. I always share with others that ask questions about economic development. Our main role is to build relationships with the private sector so that it can enhance the economic vitality of our community. It really is an emphasis in our department. I have with me on the airwaves somewhere, I think on Microsoft Teams, Mr. Dale King with Fabar Construction. He's representing KSA Investments to help answer any questions from the developer's point of view. But I just want to start off briefly with this overview of the opportunity, so we're all on the same page, and just share some metrics based on some research that I was able to conduct in preparation for this discussion tonight. So before I get started, I just want to share personal stories. So each year, you all know, many of you all know I have 4 boys, my wife and I do, and we go to Yellowstone each year. And we end up going to Yellowstone, and we stay in Pocatello, Idaho. So Pocatello is not exactly a tourist destination, but we stay there because there's a hotel that we like there. As a result of that hotel, we go to Jerry's Jumbo's Cafe. It's in downtown Pocatello, has really big pancakes. My kids love them. So we do that, then we go to the Pine Ridge Mall, which is also in Pocatello. We do all those activities in Pocatello on the way to Yellowstone because of that hotel opportunity that's there. So I just want to share the nature of what that does for tourism. I know in Caldwell, we really pride ourselves on being a destination for the area, and we have tremendous assets here. And I think a hotel would certainly benefit our opportunities that are available in this community. So as an agenda here briefly, I'd like to talk about the proposed hospitality project and need. Further, I'd like to discuss the analysis of the hotel need, city-to-city assessment of hotels. I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. I'll mention places like Pocatello and Idaho Falls and others. Next, I'd like to talk about property details, and then site details, letter of intent terms, property tax figures, review the site and the area under consideration, and then discuss the letter of intent with you all. Okay, so you'll notice also that a lot of these images that I chose to include in this presentation are from the Caldwell Event Center. And of course, you'll see the Caldwell Night Rodeo first. So hospitality overview. City staff has been in communication with a seasoned hotel developer to integrate a new hotel project in the Caldwell Event Center area. Within the sub-area master plan, many of you are familiar with Logan Simpson working on that plan. A hotel is a key element of the vision for this growing area. With other hotels in operation, KSA Investments LLC has the ability to develop a quality hotel project on an important gateway parcel within the city. And then the city has a pronounced hospitality gap. Caldwell has 2 branded hotels with 146 combined rooms. La Quinta Inn has 65 rooms. Best Western Plus has 81 rooms. There are also 2 motels. They're right off of I-84. We have one that's the I-84 Motor Inn, and that one has 26 rooms. And then the Budget Inn has 24 rooms. Between the two, we have 50 rooms for those 2 hotels there. So here's the graphic from the census. These are the top 5 cities in Idaho. Congratulations, Caldwell is ranked number 4. So you see us there in the top 5 behind Boise is number 1, Meridian number 2, Nampa number 3, Caldwell number 4, Idaho Falls number 5. Again, this is from 2023. The census numbers are a little dated, so if you see that 70,901 and you're thinking, man, that seems a little slim, you're absolutely right. 2024 numbers reflect a higher metric. We're right around 73,420 according to Compass. So you can see that Boise has approximately 29 hotels. Meridian has approximately 13 hotels. Nampa is approximately 15 hotels, with 1 under construction right off of Garrity. Caldwell has 4 hotels, and again, we have the 2 branded hotels and then the 2 motels. Idaho Falls has approximately 25 hotels. Pocatello has approximately 15 hotels. So you can see that there's an obvious and clear hospitality leakage in Caldwell. Leakage in our sector is referred to as money that's leaving your community. So in other words, individuals that are staying in Nampa when they otherwise could stay here. That's essentially what's happening to us. Not to point Nampa as the bad guy here, but they stay in Meridian as well, and Boise, and all over the valley, except for Caldwell in many cases. And that's due to our lackluster inventory for hospitality options. So property details. This is 21st Avenue, which is 4.187 acres. There's a lot of information on here, so let me break it down for you. The 21st Avenue lot is primarily used for parking vehicles, trailers, and animals, primarily during the rodeo and the fair. It's not landscaped, there's no islands, it's not up to code standards, so it's parked there, but it's a little chaotic in many cases. But it is used as a parking lot for many of the events that take place. The pricing for the land in the area has increased. So let's just take the metric of 4.187 acres. Let's consider that at $17 a square foot. That land could be valued at $3.1 million. Is that the highest and best use for that property? That's one question that we have to ask ourselves as a community. The lift station that's on the site will be relocated in roughly 1 year. This is part of a larger sewer project. The hotel project is proposing shared parking with stakeholder groups and trailer parking within the plan. There's approximately 251 stalls within their site plan. They designated within their plan. They only need roughly 173 to 175 for their specific project. But in this case, they were looking to add additional parking to support the events and activities that took place in the Caldwell Event Center. So let's talk a little bit about current inventory. Right now, there's 120 stalls at Griffiths Park. So that little circular parking lot that's right across from Woodfield has 120 stalls. The public fair building parking lot that's owned by the city, but the fair primarily uses it for events, has 217 stalls at that location. There's 284 stalls along O'Connor and the Field House, which is along the Blaine frontage there. And then there's 326 stalls north of the parking, or north of the tracks, which is a parking lot that was recently constructed. So in total, there's 947 stalls. Further points of discussion. So I had a chance to talk to the Caldwell Event Center staff. The catchment area that's just north of the O'Connor Fieldhouse isn't used very heavily throughout the year. So could that be an area that's cleared and it could be designated as additional parking or trailer parking only? Wolf Field has wingtips, and you can see them circled in yellow on the graphic there. That is slated and designed for extra parking to accommodate Wolf Field and also the Caldwell Event Center. I counted how many stalls were included in the design. It's 150 stalls that are not currently created. And of course, it has 5 large bus stalls that are also within the plan. And then the sub-area master plan, I mentioned this, it calls for an extension of parking at the current parking that's near the center. So that parking lot that has 217 stalls in the plan for the sub-area master plan is a call to action to create more inventory at that location by expanding that parking lot. So that's another option for us. And then lastly, could we designate drop-off and pick-off locations for rideshare options like Uber and Lyft and other services? Could this help make better use of that parking lot that's north of the tracks? Those are things to consider as we think about this project. Okay, so the terms of the LOI, and I'll let Dale King describe more. Of course, he's on the line there if you have direct questions regarding what they submitted. It was submitted through Colliers. KSA Investments would like to lease the land in its entirety, the 4.187 acres for no less than 50 years, with 2 options to extend the term of 10 years. The developer will be moving forward with a nationally branded hotel, and that hotel will have 100+ rooms. The developer would like to start construction no later than spring of 2025. The developer would like to work with the fair and the rodeo to have a shared parking agreement during the fair and the rodeo each year. The developer has discussed the possibility of a land swap with the city, so consider that as an option as well. Of course, there's a lease, and the terms of the lease are clear in the LOI, but there's another option to swap land if that is more acceptable to this council. Okay. I think I'm frozen. Eddie, you mind hitting that for me? There it is. Okay. So, financial comparison. So right now, today, as I'm standing here with you all, the current tax revenue is $0. We have a government exemption on that property. Future tax revenue with that $20 million investment for this hotel at 90%, which is new construction, I think that's an impact from House Bill 389. We're only able to accept 90% of that, times the levy rate is $127,840.14 annually. That, and 100% of that is $142,044.60 annually. So let's just take the $127,000. Property taxes impact all taxing districts. Doesn't only impact the city, impacts the ambulance, City of Caldwell, Caldwell School District, Caldwell, Western Idaho, Canyon County, Mosquito Abatement, and Canyon Highway. And then the Association of Idaho Cities. This is from the City Budgeting Manual. They gave us sales tax data from 2024. Thank you, Ray Lynn, for providing this information to me. Of the 5 largest cities in the state, Caldwell is the lowest in sales tax. And that is because we have a lot of leakage that's leaving our community. So if we as a city want to keep money in our community, it's assets like a hotel that increase the sales tax revenue in your city. So you see that our sales tax is lower than all the other cities that were within that previous listing that I just showed you. And that is something that we need to work on as a community. So this sales tax information is relevant to to projects like a hotel, like shopping centers, like retail and commercial projects that are forthcoming. These are only going to help us fill that gap even further. Okay, so alignment with the Caldwell Event Center. So the College of Idaho and the Sawtooth Sockeyes, they have athletic events. Of course, the College of Idaho plays at Simplot Stadium. They have football, soccer. There's a 5,000 seat capacity. Wolf Field has a 1,000 seat capacity. J. Albertson's Activity Center has about 2,200 capacity. And there are times when visiting teams that play against the College of Idaho stay in nearby Nampa. Again, I don't want to villainize Nampa, but that is a matter of fact. When the teams come here and we just don't have the inventory or there's not availability, they have to stay in other communities. That's just the reality of the matter. Canyon County Fair. The Canyon County Fair has around 60,000 attendees over the course of a 4-day event. The fair features a variety of attractions, including rides, concerts, animals, food, family-friendly events, and that's according to the Idaho Press, an article that I found. So all those attendees, we, within reason, could not ever estimate that they'd all stay in Caldwell. The goal is to get them all to stay in Caldwell, but the reality is that we just don't have the hotel space for them to do that. So, of course, the Canyon County Fair, we have leakage there as well. Caldwell Night Rodeo, we have over 40 to 50,000 attendees across 5 to 7 nights of rodeo action. That's according to their website. Those 50,000 individuals that attend the rodeo often have to stay in other communities outside of Caldwell, and that is not what we want to see moving forward. So the dirt lot is as it is today, and we could see a flag hotel that's branded by Marriott or another group that could be a real beacon on a gateway corridor in our community. And that is all I have. With that, I will answer any questions you have. And of course, again, I just want to make Dale King available through Favor Construction to answer any questions from the developer's point of view.
Okay, thank you so much. Councilor Register.
Well, I have a lot of questions. So I don't know, does somebody else want to go first? Do you have a lot of questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple of quick ones.
Okay.
First of all, the value of that ground is 3.1 million, you said, and $5,000 a year is lease. How do we come up with the 5,000? Just a shot in the dark or what?
Yes, so Mayor, Councilor Stoddard, I did not come up with that figure myself with the 5,000 and 2% annual increase. That is something that was represented by the developer, and I can let Dale refer to how they came up with that number. But in essence, what I was able to share was just the historic leases that we have in place out there currently. And it could have been an assessment of that, but I did not come up with that figure myself. I don't know.
Okay, it just seemed a little bit cheap to me, that's all, and relative to the value of the ground. And the other question I had is, have you got a buy-off from the rodeo board and the fair folks relative to the hotel?
Yes, so Mayor, Councilor Stoddard, I have not personally had discussions with either entity. I know that the mayor has had some discussions with those entities, and I know discussions are ongoing. I don't believe the fair has been involved, but I do know that the commissioners have been approached with this.
Yeah, because I know they always talk to us about lack of parking, you know, when they have their events there and everything, so I just curious. I wish every hotel that we build here in Caldwell would have parking within its own boundaries. In other words, either on top or on the bottom or whatever. That would solve us a lot of problems, but I was just wondering whether those two organizations had a buy-off on it, so that's all.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilor Stoddard, I've talked to both of those, and I can comment towards the end. If that works.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, I've spoken, so on that lot, we do have agreements with the rodeo and with the college. So I've spoken to the rodeo, with actually Rob Vavold and Ed Lodge. We sat down a couple weeks ago and talked about it, and they saw the benefit, obviously for people coming in and needing places to stay for the rodeo. They did have the concern of losing the parking, so knowing that they were providing a lot of additional spaces above what was required by code, as well as looking at the potential of expanding parking areas, you know, the existing parking area next to the center, on that. So felt that we can definitely accommodate that and make sure that we do have the parking needed on that, but they definitely did see the benefit on that. In that regards, I haven't spoken directly. I'm setting up a meeting to speak with Regan Rossi at the college. As I mentioned, those are the two entities that do have some tie to that parking lot in regards to agreements. And my understanding is that they see the need as well. Obviously, with the J. Appleton's Activity Center for the basketball and the football, literally within walking distance, they see a great benefit to that. And they've been great partners in really looking at what's the benefit for the whole city and not just them exclusively. So, but there has been discussion with members of the rodeo board on that.
So I'm ready now.
You are? Okay.
Yep.
Councilor
Okay,
Register.
so I have quite a few questions, or some of them are actually statements. I don't know if you can answer these or not. I have long thought that a hotel needs to come to Caldwell, a nicer, I shouldn't say nicer, but a nice hotel coming to Caldwell that is appropriate for families and all the stuff. So I don't hate the ideas of a hotel, but what I do have concerns about, and I probably should address more of the mayor on this, is, again, the way that we're doing this, the plan and the process. We're being asked to support the mayor in signing a letter of intent for a hotel when we don't even have this sub-area master plan done yet. It's, as far as I know, they've done surveys, maybe something will be presented soon. I don't even think we have our comp plan done yet. So I feel like we're doing, once again, we're putting the cart before the horse. This was sort of the problem with the parking meters, where we did it, and then we were just going to kind of see what happened, and we just cannot afford to do that again. This is only the second time, really, that we've heard about this. The last time was at the last meeting where we were told it was going to come up. But this is the third time we've heard about a hotel in Caldwell, one in the TVCC parking lot, one maybe in that urban renewal area next to Tillian, and then we just don't hear anything about them anymore. So I am not comfortable supporting a signature on a letter of intent until we have everything worked out and we have every stakeholder on board. And while I realize in the mayor's email, you said that there were 2 rodeo board members who were on board. However, I don't think they've actually had a board meeting about it. Could be wrong about that, but I think the whole board needs to be on board. And as far as the fair, I realize nobody else has talked to them, but I have, and they were not consulted. And it's my understanding that in the sub-area master plan, where their name was listed as part of the task force or a stakeholder or whatever, however they were listed, that even during that survey though, or discussions, that a hotel didn't even come up. So they were sort of surprised about it too, that it came up in the presentation that was given to planning and zoning, but not before that. So there's so many, and again, that's just what I'm being told, but there's so many loose ends. And I think that, again, it goes back to the lack of communication and the backwards plan. I feel like if we could just get everybody on board, hear from the community again, not again because we haven't, but again as in that's what I always want. So if we could hear from the community, have the fair on the board, make sure that the whole rodeo board is on board, then it presents a different project, in my opinion. Right now, it's just one that we're rushing again, and we feel like there's this urgency to do it, and I don't understand what the urgency is right now. I'm also not thrilled about locking the city into a $5,000 a year lease. This is not a month, but a year for 50 years is what it looks like. And that concerns me, that we're saying that I don't know what the benefit is to the taxpayer by doing that. And have we put this out to bid for other people? Have we consulted with other groups? Has anybody else shown any interest in it that would maybe lease it at a higher rate? I'm concerned about a letter of intent mimicking a promise by the city of saying we're going to do this, even though if we're told that we're not going to be held to anything or it's not a contract. What is a letter of intent if not the intent, and we still don't have the plan? So I'm very cautious about that. I'm wondering what the tax revenue potential to the city would be. I'm wondering what the impact to the taxpayer is. I'm wondering if there's any additional expectations beyond this discounted land lease with the developer that they're going to be asking for at some point. I want to know what the city's doing to solve the problem that this hotel is going to create for the fair and the rodeo with their parking and whatever else comes up with that. I'm concerned about proceeding with this without adopting a plan, because we don't even have the sub-area master plan yet. So if we get that later and we decide that a hotel does need to go there, but in a different place, are we now locked into this one location? Does that location work for everybody? I think that it's this feeling of urgency again, like we're being pushed into it and rushed without a plan. And I think you asked 4 really great questions in your proposal, but I think those need to be answered too before. I don't think that we can commit to something like we did with the parking meters and then say, well, we'll figure it out on the back end, and then we don't. So until there's all those questions answered, and until we have the entire rodeo board on board, until we have the fair on board, until we've had those conversations, then I can't support it. I'm not saying I'll never support it, but I want the plan first.
Great. Thank you. Mayor, Council Register, I'll address a couple of your questions that I was able to derive from your comments. The one was the mention of the hotel to our stakeholders. That was referenced in our last meeting. We brought up the possibility of a hotel developer interested in the site, in the area, and just talked about it. I know Juan with the Caldwell Event Center, we talked to him about it as well openly with the other stakeholders there. This was on the heels of Logan Simpson presenting their draft to us. So what they did was they presented the draft plan to the Caldwell Event Center stakeholders first before the planning and zoning meeting had occurred. So all of the stakeholders, including the fair, were able to see that hotel at that location. Secondly, regarding a land lease for a hotel project, often cities incentivize hotels to bring a $20 million project onto their properties. Sometimes they charge a nominal lease, sometimes they don't charge any lease at all. I've seen leases for $1 a year. It just depends on how you'd like to slate this. I'm not suggesting we do either of those things, but really, this is not a non-traditional approach because we're trading this investment, plus we're getting a true benefit for the Caldwell Event Center. It's very similar in my mind to what the fair brings and the rodeo bring. We do not charge them market rate. In fact, the fair, if we look at their lease and the rodeo's leases, I mean, many could look at that and say, man, we're not doing well there as a city, but we are doing is giving something for the community to rally around and really have something to support as a whole. And
So
that's
on
the way I look at the
On
project
that
like
point,
this.
then, have we talked to anybody else about a hotel there, or is it just this one company?
This is, Mayor, Councilor Register, this is the only group that has approached us regarding a hotel at that location in the form of an active pursuit of it with an LOI.
Did we open it up, though, for discussion, or they came to us and said, hey, we have a project we might want to put here?
They came to us and said that this is the parcel of interest that we'd like to talk about and consider.
It's safe then to say that we don't know if other people are interested if we haven't opened it up as a possibility to other people.
Sure, and I've met with, just for clarity's sake, I've met with probably 3 or 4 hotel groups that represent different flag brands from across the country, and they've come in. A few of them have pointed out this area, this region as a whole, 21st Avenue, but none have talked about that site and said we want to pursue that particular site.
So can you tell us what happened to the other hotel, the TVCC hotel?
Sure, they are in their due diligence period still. It expires later this year, but they are still doing their due diligence on the hotel project for downtown.
So is it possible we could have a hotel downtown in the TVCC parking lot as well as one over here or on 21st?
I believe so, and you saw our inventory with regard to the other cities that are out there, and of course, those are just approximate numbers that were thrown out, but in essence, I think Caldwell has a pretty big void to fill, so I think that 2 hotels could be sustained here.
Is there a reason we can't wait for the sub-area master plan to be accepted by council in its finality with any changes, all that kind of stuff? Is there a reason why we can't wait to talk to this group after that's done? So
Sure,
we have that plan?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor, I think the sub-area master plan is a great thing to have in tandem with a consideration like this. And what they've shown us is a hotel on that site, and they've also shown us a plan with a hotel on another site. I think what I was able to gather from that practice was that we needed a hotel, or a hotel would fit in quite well with the Caldwell Event Center as a whole. So I don't think that there's any reason why we couldn't wait and say, let's approve that sub-area master plan first, and then we move forward with this LOI in the formality of getting it signed and approved and ready to go.
And speaking to the stakeholders, like the fair and the whole rodeo board, and I guess the college. Okay. Then my other question is, it's in here, was this letter of intent negotiated by our legal staff?
It was not, as far as I know.
Okay.
What was, the letter of intent that you've seen is directly from the developer.
Okay.
And that was what was.
It talks in here about how they can purchase the property within the first 5 years or some kind of land swap. So does that basically mean that within the first 5 years, they can just buy this, whether we want to sell it to them or not? I'm looking at the attorney now.
Mayor, Councilor Register, the exact consequence of that would be something we have to look through. This is not an action item tonight, it's an information item. But that the city has wide latitude in how it leases its property. It has strict parameters in how it disposes of property. And so I'm unaware of an ability for a city to just simply have an option on its property when the city's going to dispose of property, their disposition requirements. So simply having a lease that permits the city to circumvent the disposition process and sell the property, that's not going to wind up in an actual contract.
Well, because I guess that's what I'm wondering is a letter of intent to maybe, like we do our RFPs where we say, okay, you can build it if we build it kind of thing. That's one thing. But this seems like there's stuff in here like the lease rate and the 50 years and the option to buy and whatever else is listed out in here is almost like a negotiation in a letter of intent. So is that normal to have the terms listed in here if it's not an actual contract?
Mayor, Council Register, letters of intent span from very simple things to very detail-oriented things. I don't, the other party to this letter of intent is on Zoom and could probably do a better job articulating why they included the things they did and why they excluded other things, but.
Well, I guess what I'm asking you then is if the council decides to go ahead with the letter of intent written like this, and then when they get to the contract phase and the council's like, no, we're not gonna do it for $5,000 a year, we'll do it for this amount, then are we held to this?
So, Mayor and Council Register, this is not an action item tonight, so the council can't approve this
No, I
item.
know, when it comes back, I guess, for that.
Mayor, Council Register, the point that there was a letter of intent that was actually actionable by the council, it would need to be very explicit that it was non-binding, that it was simply an expression of the parties' then present objectives. And the consequence of it being non-binding is that when you get into actual contract negotiation, you can't extrapolate from the letter of intent and force the other party into any particular contract term.
Yeah, so this is simply a starting point on this, so this does not tie the city into anything, just gives a starting point, and that's what this discussion is for, so just to kind of touch on a few things real quick, and I know Councilor Dittenber had your light on, we'll get over to you. Is that, yes, they did approach us, so we were not out asking, they came to us, said, we really would love to build some hotels in Caldwell, this would be our first spot, we'd love to have one. They submitted a letter of intent with that desire to find out if we had any interest. And that's really all that letter of intent does. Is there any interest at all before we start pursuing this? Because if there's not, then we can leave and move on to a different city. But obviously there is interest on this, and so we want to look through it, investigate it, and see if it is the appropriate place, the appropriate time in that regards. And so that's why we are having this discussion. So I know that you had some comments about, again, cart before the horse. No, this is adding into the cart, putting in what do you want in the cart, so that is what this is, what this discussion is for tonight, and hopefully to get some direction from council about, is the lease rate, is it not enough, is it sufficient, do we want to move forward with the 50-year lease, do we want it more, do we want it less? We would love to move forward on this, but it is up to the council and the direction that you do give, but that is what this discussion right now is about, is to get the council's purview on it and direction from you in regards to this opportunity that again was presented to us. As was mentioned, with Steve and the benefits that bring, it was mentioned about the fair, they paid nothing on their lease for the downtown, for the Caldwell Event Center when they use it for the fair, it's absolutely nothing. The rodeo is discounted as well. They do pay $6,000 to $8,000, somewhere in there with an increase each year on that, or each 5 years, I think it is. But still minimal compared to what the use is on there. But it's the benefit that brings to the city, the tax dollars, as was mentioned earlier by Mr. Lodge, in that regards. And the fair brings a lot of people to downtown. And again, so we were excited for this opportunity for them to come to us with their excitement, showing, we want to bring this many rooms, knowing that it's going to bring sales tax, it's going to bring, restaurants and things like that are going to follow. We see a great benefit. Are you going to get 100% agreement from the fair board, from the county commissioners, from the rodeo board? Probably not. I don't think we can get 100% agreement on anything from anybody these days. But again, that's where the council has to make that decision of what's right and best for Caldwell, for its residents, increasing our tax value, things of that nature. So in that regards, but again, that is what this discussion is about tonight. We are not forcing anything on you. It is for your discussion. And if you as a council, as a majority say, no, we don't want it, move away from it, then we do. If you say we do want it under these parameters, then we move forward on that. But that is what this is for tonight, is that discussion. So nothing of the cart or the horse being put before the cart. This is the cart, and then you decide if we want to hitch up the horse or not. Councilor Dittenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure I have a question, but you were able to glean some from the last comments that were made. So if there's a question in there, please feel free to jump in and help answer it. So from a regional perspective, if I'm not mistaken, there's just news coverage the last 2 days on the local news that Boise went from 500 rooms to 1,600 rooms in 5 years, and they're still at 90% capacity. And Boise still needs another 1,600 rooms, if I understood correctly. And so some of that leakage that you're talking about is Boise saying if Canyon County's not going to make them, we'll make them, because I definitely know people who have come into town who, come to my house and have dinner and then go to Boise because that's where the airport is and that's where the hotels are and that's what they do. So we do have definite leakage. The other thing I want to make very clear, that the taxpayers know, that the council knows, that everything that is not Taco Time and the ice cream place and everything between 22nd and Linden is 100% government subsidized, 100%. If we have a problem at the event center or at the fairgrounds, or even if we have a problem at Simplot Field, guess where it's coming from? It's coming out of our general budget. And so we as a council, we look at how can we save our general budget, how can we save the general taxpayer dollars. The best way that we do this is we put a tax-paying entity there. Even though it's only $5,000 a year, if I understood you correctly, I'm just doing the math here, that's rough math, potential for property tax, and if all the if conditions work out, there's a potential for property tax of about $128,000 a year. So if you take the land value at 3.1 and divide it by the $128,000 a year, you soon approach that time where the amount of property tax starts exceeding the value of the property and becomes a great investment for the city of Caldwell. And so I think we look at this whole area there, however it is that it plays out, and we as taxpayers go, yeah, we need to have a tax-paying entity in there to help generate revenues to pay for that whole area, that whether we believe it or not, for most of the year is blighted. During the rodeo, it looks good. During the fair, it may look good. But drive down Stock Trail between April and July, and you'll see weeds about 4 feet tall. I mean, the area is blighted. So having said that, I think there's plenty of support for it. I know I support it, and hope that we don't, overlook an opportunity. We always talk in business, we strike when the iron's hot, and I think the iron is hot in this case, and I think the council ought to strike on this. So,
Thank you.
if there's a question.
Very good. Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, again, thank you for all you do for our city. You're good for us, and you're appreciated. I do have a question and then maybe a couple of comments. Spring of 2025 is when the leasee would like to start construction by, and maybe our guest on the line could help me better here. That seems extremely optimistic, given the fact that there's a lot of hurdles to cross between now and March, April, May. How realistic is spring of 2025 to begin moving dirt there?
I can answer that if you'd like, Mayor, Councilor Williams. I think that given the amount of discussions that have taken place regarding, the current lift station and the future sewer line that's going to be placed in that area on the frontage there on that property, there is a path forward to clear the site and get it ready for development. I don't necessarily know from the standpoint of the developer's point of view. They own and operate other hotels outside the state of Idaho. So it's just a matter of how quickly they can get in and submit their necessary paperwork for the permits that are required to build on that property. I think it's an optimistic viewpoint, but I mean, in reality, we could likely get there. We do turn building permits around very, very quickly here with the city of Caldwell, and we work really closely with developers that are commercially oriented. You know, so I do think that there's a path forward there if this council agrees that this is the path that we'd like to take. It's just a matter of staff getting down and making sure that we address all the needs that are out there.
Is the gentleman on, can he hear us? I'd love to hear from him on that as well for that question. What was his name again?
Mr. Dale King.
Are you there, Dale?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Did you hear the question from Councilor Williams regarding the timeline? Could you address that?
Yes, I did. Let me say good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I appreciate you guys taking the opportunity to discuss this. I will tell you, as a matter of fact, it's an extremely aggressive goal to try to get in the dirt by spring. But most of the opportunities in order to do that lie with our continued relationships with our architects, engineers, designers, and all that good stuff. If we didn't necessarily have those into place, your DD drawings would take you anywhere from 6 months to 9 months just to get to that capacity. However, because we've done business with these engineers, architects, and all this good stuff, and we've done multiple hotels of this magnitude at 112 rooms, we know exactly what it's going to take, and we can turn those plans roughly in 60 to 90 days maximum that we need to have our plan sets ready to submit to the city of Caldwell.
Do you have another?
No.
Now, with that being discussed, you also have to take into account that there is a lot of money that's paid out from the initial design for plan sets and all this good stuff. And those are very large fees that are taken on by the developer in order to put this project together. When we do land leases, we just completed one roughly 2 years ago now, with the Port of Bellingham, where the land lease was $1. And because they wanted to have a hotel near their particular airport, a full amenities hotel, that was put together. And we arrived the same type of purchase and sale in order to purchase the land once the hotel stabilized at market rate value, which then they've got their money back and able to move forward. We're just offering the same type of trigger item that the city would be able to use that particular money to move on to other projects once this is completed.
Thank you for being here, and I appreciate that answer. I think it is what I expected, given the experience and the ongoing work that you're doing. I would hope that you already have a concept in mind for this particular property. Your group or you have looked at it already, and so I would imagine you at least have a concept in mind, and we don't want to be too premature in getting things out there, but I'd be eager to see that. So thank you for being here tonight to help us with that. I think going back to our discussion here, Mr. Jenkins, I agree, we need this. The leakage here is killing us. It really is. This is part of the puzzle in Caldwell, that if we as a city don't figure it out, we're giving away opportunity. I'm thinking of another big entertainment project that we're hoping to hear from soon, that we've been talking about for months, and how this could dovetail with something like that. And the timing of this, frankly, is opportune in that sense as well. So I would be in favor of us considering this letter of intent, and I know this is not an action item, and so there's no motion here, but if we are not willing to at least continue this discussion and say, yes, we're interested, we need, we want, I think what we're likely to see, and I hope we've looked at it already, is when one hotel pops up, it's likely to see a second or third come in right behind them. And so I'm sure you're ahead of us on this already, Mr. Jenkins, and you've already isolated one or two other sites, and perhaps even in conjunction with this plan that is being worked on for our entertainment district. You mentioned they had 2 sites where they would like to see them. You've just represented to us that we've got room in our city for 2 more hotels. Maybe that becomes a second hotel within the entertainment district. So I would be reluctant to shut this down at this point in any regard, and would want to express my appreciation to this group for coming to us and say, let's continue this discussion.
Thank you. Councilor Doty?
Mr. Mayor, I am in support as well for it to move forward. I have talked to all 3 entities. So I've talked to College of Idaho, talked to Diana, I've talked to the rodeo, not the board, but the 2 presidents, the incoming and outgoing, and they did have a board meeting. And after that board meeting, I reached back out, and the consensus was still they support the hotel. I'm not sure who was in favor and who wasn't. Much like here, we had a split vote tonight, 4-2. In the end, when they came out, they were in support of the hotel. There are a couple things I'd like to happen, though, if we are going to move forward. Because if it does happen in the spring, there may be an issue here before all the parking gets in place that the hotel will provide, right? The extra parking spaces, the extra trailer spaces for parking. So there is a little hiccup right there. I would like all of our entities to get together, the city, the rodeo, the fair, C of I, for some temporary, especially those catch pins. But we have to also honor a commitment of whatever that board says. So if they want those removed, or I've heard that maybe some of them are put in concrete and not as easily, maybe they shouldn't have been put in that way, but they are. But we also have to be willing to cooperate. But we have about 2 weeks here before the next council meeting, right, where this is going to come up. So I'd like to get that board together as quickly as you can. Certainly, this is just my opinion. You don't have to take it. And let them come up with, if that lot's gone, where are we going to at least temporarily park people until the hotel comes in, and then where are we going to permanently park people from there? And that way, there'd be a buy-in. I think there are ways for it to work, including even bigger plans for the fair, which I won't discuss here today because that's not what we're talking about, but there's some great ideas for that and what direction that should go. And I'm sure Diana will talk to us at the next council meeting when it's open for public discussion. But I'd really like to see that happen so that everybody that thinks they own the land sometimes forgets that the city owns the land, and get them together and work together and say, where can we park these? Where's the best spot for the trailer? Instead of walking from left to right, maybe you have to walk from right to left. And I think that'll help out at the next council meeting that they have all gotten together. I understand there was a committee about the entertainment district. I'm talking strictly about what are we going to do for parking while that parking lot's being built in the meantime, especially if it comes in the spring. Thank you.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Appreciate those comments. Councilor Register.
Yeah, I just wanted to just sort of close up my comments. So I, again, am not opposed to a hotel. I'm not opposed to this, to having, making that area better. I'm not opposed to hearing what the plan is. I'm not opposed to any of it. But the only thing that I can gather is that I feel like everybody's distracted by this excitement to put a hotel in when we don't even have the plan for the sub-area master plan yet. We don't have it. So we don't really know, we know the concept of it, we know what was presented to planning and zoning, but we don't have anything adopted by the council. And so I guess everybody's moving on the assumption that it's gonna be adopted, but I'm concerned because, again, we didn't have a plan for the parking meters, we did it anyway, and I asked for community involvement to come and speak at the meetings. I was denied, so I'm going to ask again to have community involvement when it comes to the feedback on the hotel. I understand that eventually it's going to, I don't know if I actually agree that the $5,000 a year is actually going to eventually catch up. That would take 22 years, and by that time, the land would be worth so much more. So I don't know, but anyway, I'm going to disagree with you, Mayor, where I believe that the whole cart and the horse theory of putting these things together first and then accepting the plan is backwards. And I think that you accept the plan and then you take all the pieces and pull them out or put them together or pull them out and put them together. You just have it there first. So I'm not against the idea. I'm not against the improvements. I'm not against a hotel. I just think that everybody needs to come to the table, have the community involved, and have a plan first, and then we can go forward with it and do that.
Counselor Allgood?
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins, I heard a couple of conflicting statements, and I just want to make sure I understand. It says in our packet that this property would, and I realize this is just a one-sided, we haven't even had a chance to go over it, but the property would be leased for $5,000 a year. And then in your presentation, you quoted a figure of how much tax revenue it would generate. Are we expecting that this hotel would pay taxes plus a lease, or one or the other, or what is our belief or expectation there?
Yes, Mayor, Councilor Allgood. So although the city would maintain ownership of the property via the lease that was proposed through the LOI, the developer would pay taxes on the actual project on top of the land. So they wouldn't own the ground, but they would pay taxes on the actual property itself to the relative taxing districts. So that's where that figure came of 128,000, somewhere in there. And then the 5,000 is, just think of it as a separate lease with the city for that ground lease. So it's
Gotcha.
almost like a
That
build-to-suit
makes sense.
project.
So, I believe we all have some thoughts about what we would like to see or the conditions we would like to see. If we wanted to submit a thought about a condition that we would like to see in an LOI or a future contract, how do we go about doing that?
I think, having discussions here today is a great start. I've already written some notes that pertain to some of the discussions we've had. But beyond that, and as we lead up to the meeting, the next meeting, where this is going to be presented more formally, I think we could definitely include some of that. Please feel free to reach out directly to me. I can pass that information along to the developer, make sure that that is included in there for their consideration, and then we can discuss that more formally at the next meeting.
Okay, and I definitely would want our legal to go over it. And the last thing is just the Event Center Task Force, whatever, myself, Councilor Dittenberg, Mr. Jenkins, we've all participated in that. And the whole idea when that started was kicked off when the amphitheater idea came to town, and things were evolving there and changing. And we've had discussion, and we have a sub-area master plan that's being worked. But one of the things that I'm looking at, and I'll just speak for me, is some of the ideas that have been presented for that area are all based on taxpayers paying for it all. Where when the amphitheater was coming in, that was going to be private money paying for it. When we talk about a hotel, again, it's private money paying for it, and it's not all on the taxpayer. And that's what I'm looking at is I want that area to become just a valley-wide attraction where people are coming to the fair, they're coming to the rodeo, they're coming to football, but I don't want the taxpayers to have to subsidize this on a forever ongoing basis. So the private entities come in to help us fund this great entertainment area is kind of what I'm looking for. And so, and this fits in with that. So I appreciate your work on this, Stephen.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Good. Okay, thank you so much. Great feedback, great comments. Appreciate that. Thank you, Steve, for that presentation. We appreciate it very much, and we'll be seeing you again in the near future. Okay, so that moves us.
Can I make one more comment real
yes.
quick, if you don't mind?
Yes, please
If
go ahead.
that's okay, I would like to address the comment from the city council member that thinks there's a cart before the horse issue. The problem is, especially with private funding, is that private funding needs to have somewhat of an agreement and an understanding to move forward on projects. And the reason why they need to do that is because then they can plan for them and start spending money for designs and all this good stuff. You're not going to have a developer go out and spend $300,000 to $500,000 on a whim that they're going to be able to visit with the city and talk them into leasing or selling them a piece of property due to this particular design. It's not going to happen. And therefore, the first initial stage that you go through with municipalities is trying to have a letter of understanding on designing for that particular parcel. And what we did when we were talking to Stephen, who was a wonderful asset, by the way, I've got to tell you, for a city to have an individual like him at the helm to try to help business along is fantastic. They've got to be able to have some type of understanding in order to plan for these type of projects. Without that letter of understanding, there'll be no plan, there'll be no future, there'll be no movement. The only way you'd be able to do that is for the city to take on that type of cost and deficit in order to create a plan and then try to take it to a private entity to build. That would be the only way you'd be able to facilitate it without a letter of understanding.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So,
I think you misunderstood what I was saying. If you were sort of abreast of what was going on over there, they are developing a plan for the entire area. It's called the Submaster Plan that they've been working on, and so I prefer to have that done before we commit to anything. That's what I was saying about the cart before the horse, was committing to anything at all before that sub-area master plan was finished and presented. That's all. It had nothing to do with your letter.
yeah, very good. Thank you again. We appreciate all those comments. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, taking some time, and we're excited to continue moving this forward. And sounds like we'll see you again here in the near future as well. So thank you so much for your comments. Okay, our next item of discussion is regarding access card procedures at Caldwell City Hall. We asked our IT director, Jose Menchaca, to be here. We appreciate you sticking around with us to kind of go over those details and everything. Kind of, he sent me a great depiction the other day in regards to some of these things. It's kind of like an iceberg where you don't see the big mass underneath in regards to what it takes to put those in. So,
Per this policy, if you're not CJIS certified, you should not have access to any of the locations that are currently running Spillman information. So that's why I base our security access to, I refer to this constantly. Now, this building, there's 3 different locations that if you're not CJIS certified, you shouldn't have unattended access to. One's the city clerk, the other one's the city clerk's clerk, and then the IT department. Police department also has a number of areas that run Spillman, receive that information. So, getting back to the access of this building, if you're assigned access to a door, scheduled access to that door, and somebody changes that access, could confuse the whole system, lock up, and now some of the doors stop working. We've had that issue happen in the past, and to rectify that, we'd had to go back and find out exactly what permissions were assigned to the doors. Because if there's 2 different schedules assigned to the door, and any person can have 3 different prox cards, now one schedule conflict with the other schedule, so we just have to be aware of that.
good.
Any questions?
Very good. I know it happens to all of us, happened to me. I was not able to get into a few places recently, so we reached out to Jose, and it's almost like a domino. You make one change, and it affects other areas. For example, the one that I was not able to get into recently was over at the old city hall.
621, correct.
So on that, where there had been some changes with fire going into there, and it affected, so that one change affected many others, and so it's a very convoluted kind of maze to go through.
We just have to be aware as to when we're making changes and exactly which door we're giving access to, and if the schedule coincides with what other access you may have, just as long as we don't confuse the system and lock up the doors. So.
Very good. Councilor Williams.
I'm a little confused, Jose. What is your presentation to us tonight?
Just door access.
Okay, so the question has come up, and several times with this council, we've asked specifically about access to different places in this building. I don't know that I'm hearing answers to those questions in what you're telling me. I guess that's why I'm a little confused. You said, and I didn't hear you clearly, there are 3 primary areas to this building? What are
3
those
areas in
3?
this building that receive information from the Spillman software.
Okay.
Islets, city clerk being one, clerk's clerk being the other, and
What's the other? I don't,
the clerk's clerk office that sits out here in the front,
the clerk's team
clerk's team, and the IT department.
and the IT, those 3,
Correct.
okay? And the rest of the building?
The rest of the building does not receive any of that information. I did reach out to our neighboring cities just to inquire as to what access city council and mayor had. Napa said city council has access to council chambers and the council meeting room. Meridian, same. They have access to council chambers. No other access to the rest of the building unless it's currently open. The mayor has 24 access to the mayor's office and other locations.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Let me think for a minute while
Yep.
we.
Yeah, and that was kind of what the discussion was tonight, and I appreciate Jose reaching out to those other cities to kind of see, because that's been the discussion of, you know, the access, and I know there's been some hiccups, and we've tried to work through those, but want to make sure they understood that it is very detailed in regards to the accesses, and it's not just a simple flip of the switch, unfortunately. And I wish I had that printout that you had sent to me that shows
For the iceberg.
all the lines and that connects in that regard. So, again, the discussion was in regards to the access to the building. Again, it's not trying to, you know, inhibit the council to be able to access the city hall, to access these chambers, things of that nature. That's why we reached out to other cities, kind of see how they do it, in that regards for access. But again, it's, you know, where is it appropriate for the access for city council members? Where is it not? And so that's kind of what this discussion.
Mr.
And I
Mayor.
know that I kind of have my thoughts on that, as you've all said in that email that I sent, and kind of showed the areas that I would propose for council access in regards to that, and kind of boils down to liability. I don't know if we've reached out to ICRIM to kind of see if they had thoughts or issues or concerns of additional access, but that's kind of what it, I guess, boils down to, and kind of discussion of council. Yeah, Councilor Doty.
Mr. Mayor, for us, the CGIS thing was just, I don't even know why we did this. Many areas have CGIS. Yeah, you're restricted from going in there. It's pretty simple. There's plenty of places where I formerly worked that people weren't allowed, that they weren't CGIS certified. The rest of the building, other than IT, and the labs, of course, were under restriction. I think the bigger question here, it doesn't really matter what other cities are doing. It's what is our purpose here and what does the council want? So meaning, and I've done some of my own research from different cities and councils and came up with several reasons why council needs access, and we'll probably get into some of that discussion in C here. But simply, and I can go over all of these, but for the lack of time, is just oversight and governance, where the city council is responsible for overseeing the budget, and we should have access to people within the building. I'm certain that you have monitored my key fob activities. I'm well aware of that. Someone has told me that. So you know everywhere we go if you want to know that. Clearly, the public hearing meetings, the facility management, emergency preparedness, you may be available by phone, but you may not be able to be here. And whether I'm here and we're both gone or 3 of us are gone, somebody needs access to something. Finding someone else to come along. I'm sure other people have access to, especially IT, can go anywhere in the building. To restrict your elected officials, but give hired officials more latitude as to where they're going to go in the city buildings, to me just seems contradictory to one another. They can't make policy decisions, they can't make emergency declarations, and so I think we need some oversight there and some accessibility. Clearly, that we've talked about this tonight, the transparency and trust. Regular access to city buildings can enhance transparency, as council members can demonstrate their commitment to serving the public and addressing community needs. I think by the monitoring of our key fobs, you can see we're not charging into everyone's offices or trying to. We're not entering buildings at all hours of the night, snooping around in people's desks. For me, it's more about an emergency need and being able to access the building when we need to, and I'll cut it off there since we've been here a while.
So just, so you know, I am not monitoring key fobs of council members. I know that we did when there was issues with some of your council members. I know Councilor Allgood, Williams, and yourself, Councilor Doty. We did go in to see where those had been accessed, but that is the only time. So I do not have the time to look and see where you're trying to access. And I'd have to go through Jose and his department for that, so they could vouch for that I'm not monitoring your access when you're trying to get in and out. The only time is when you've had issues to look and see where those are at, but I am not monitoring those whatsoever.
Correct. Mayor does not have access to that software.
So you may want to ask your source where they got the information.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we want to get into that here tonight. I know that a phone call was placed and got a hold of one of the IT members when you were sitting with him monitoring my key fob activity, and they were caught off guard, and I'll just leave it at that.
I have a question. So you mentioned there were 3 places that can't be accessed. It was the clerk's office, IT, and where? Because of the CGIS?
Correct. It's the city clerk's team.
Clerk team office where the gate is.
Okay. So the city clerk's office, the team office, and IT. So we're restricted from all sorts of other places council is. So are all employees restricted from the same places we are?
Yes.
So they can't go into other rooms, just only IT can? Like, how do they get, like, I don't know, where's an example of where we're restricted that we should have access to?
Well, I think we should have access to every city building that we have, so like the
Well, and I agree with
airport,
you,
the,
But
Go
I'm trying to figure out, like, can employees go from office to office and we can't?
I would think they could, right?
Right.
Raylene, can you access anything other than finance? Maybe she can't. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that question.
No, so it is just finance that I can access, which is totally fine, because that's where I would want to access.
Yeah, so anyway, I agree with Counselor Doty that council should have access for all the reasons that he said, including the emergency stuff. And I know that at least 1, 2, 3, 4 of us have passed background checks to be able to have access to Spillman, so maybe we can just pass the background check again and get the access if we needed that. Not that, no, but I'm saying, not that I need to get into IT or anything else, but if that's the concern, because it came up, it's easily rectified if that was a concern. But I don't think we need access to that stuff anyway. I just think that we should be afforded access to City Hall for those types of events that he was talking about.
That also includes the police department.
It's only in the areas of the police department in which CJIS is stored, no different than if a rider's riding with
Right.
you, they're not supposed
You're
to
just
read the police
escorted.
computer, but we have riders all
Yeah.
the time. We have people all over city, all over the police department all of the time. They just can't access the CJIS information.
Right,
Correct.
got it.
Councilor Dittenber and then Councilor Allgood.
My question might be kind of simple. The other night, I was walking around down here, and it was around 11:30 at night, coming back from dinner, and I just felt the urge to come into City Hall. Could have I have got in at 11:30 at night with my?
Yes.
And if I came in and started walking around, do we have the security guard that's here at 11:30?
Not at that hour, no.
Okay. And if I did come in and walk around, would there be some sort of a notification somewhere that, hey, Counselor Dittenber came in at 11:30 and he tried to get a Band-Aid out of the medicine cabinet? Would people know that I came in at 11:30?
Any door you accessed would be logged. The only problem is after midnight, the alarm is set to turn on automatically. So if you were to enter the building after midnight, you trigger the alarm.
So even if we did have access, we're still restricted after midnight. We wouldn't be able to
Correct.
enter the building. And at what time does the alarm?
6 a.m.
6 a.m.? Okay.
Councilor Allgood.
Thank you. The police department was the first to get the Prox card system, and
Correct.
I was part of that. And so does it still work, Jose, where you have a number of different groups and each person is assigned to a group and each group has an access to certain things? Or do you do
Access in the
everybody-
software?
No, access to a certain portion of any building.
Yes, each door is limited to the person's access.
So what I'm asking, just I think I know the answer, I'm just wanting to make sure. You don't give us access individually, you have a group called City Council.
Correct.
And we belong to the City Council, and that's the group we're in.
And the doors are signed accordingly to the group.
Yes, yes. So it's not like Counselor Stodic may have some access and I have some access. We all just have council access.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion or questions or? Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Jose. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
being here and helping answer those questions. So the next discussion item is future potable water projects. Mr. MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for this opportunity. I'm here to let the City Council know and the Mayor of our water situation down in the south part of town. We have some projects that we had proposed for downtown, or I should say for the south part of town, primarily Zone 3 and Zone 4, and that includes a well project and some increased capacity at our well 17 booster station. And what we have learned recently from our consultant who does water modeling is that we are reaching capacity sooner than we had expected in that south part of town. And so as soon as we learned this back in July, and when I say we, I'm talking about Public Works, we got together and started putting together a game plan in where we would look at the projects that we have budgeted and then look at what other projects we feel like we may need to expedite so that we can get the capacity we need for that part of town. And in addition to that, we felt it was necessary to reach out to developments that were looking at development down in that area and letting them know of the situation. The situation right now is not, it's not an issue for everything that's existing, so I don't want people to think that all of a sudden we're out of water, because that's not the case. The water system has quite a bit of redundancy in it. It's for your water system to fail, you have to meet a bunch of these different scenarios all at once, like a perfect storm. And so even though we're not at that point yet, we don't want to be anywhere close to that point. We want to make sure we have a water system that can handle the demand that we have. So what we have done is we have met personally, I've met personally with many of the developers that are down in the south part of town. I've let them know that any application they bring forward will be able to proceed through council, but there's going to be a caveat or a note placed on the engineering staff report that basically states that they will be restricted to connect to water, or they will not be able to connect to water until we agree that there's capacity for them to do so. And that generally means that there probably has to be at least one well constructed on Zone 3. For the development that has already been or received their entitlements, at this point, we have allowed them to proceed forward with some level of comfort. But we have our consultant right now actually doing a deep dive into that south part of town, and he is specifically looking at the developments that have been approved so that we can get a clear number on what's in and really what our capacity is. Water system capacity is, a lot of it's theoretical, the way that they run the model and the plan. And so it gives us a good sense of where we're at. It's not always exact, and so we want to make sure we leave ourselves enough comfort or a factor of safety so that we're not anywhere close to a situation where we would run into problems. The requirements for DEQ are that when you have capacity on a water line, you have to meet all these thresholds, and that includes the peak times, and that includes all the fire flow, and that includes anticipating that maybe your biggest well is going to be offline, and so you have to meet all those. And that's the situation we're in now, but with the development that's coming, that's on the horizon, we feel like it's necessary for us to probably expedite a couple of these projects so that we can make sure that we're staying ahead of the curve, and making sure that some of the new development coming in knows the situation we're in. As we have met with developers, they have been very receptive A few of the very large developers that we've met with have even offered to donate land for wells and build the wells on their properties, which is something that would definitely be a benefit to the city. And we would have some kind of an MOU or a cost share for some of those projects, but they want to take some of those projects in-house and do them themselves so they can make sure they stay on a schedule that meets with their timelines. We have, if we had one decent well on Zone 3, that would basically mitigate all of the concerns we have for the next couple of years. Our intent really is to push forward on 3 wells, and that helps us diversify so that if one well happens to not hit good water, we have 2 other wells that we're working on so that we can have that redundancy. This year, we plan to have some improvements that are budgeted for on our Well 17 booster station, and that's going to help capacity in Zone 2 and Zone 3. And we have several other projects that we are looking at. At this point, it's kind of a moving target, but we are confident that we can certainly work with our consultant, make sure that we're not allowing growth to happen that's going to be detrimental to the city. But I wanted to just give you that information. I sent out an email a week ago, and in retrospect, I wish I had sent it out a month ago when we started visiting with developers, but I neglected to do that. And so I'm happy to answer any questions, and I stand for questions.
Do you mind real quick just going over the zones? Like, because I know there's the 4 zones, and I'm looking at the map of them and how they're laid out, and they kind of go in and out. They're not square by any
Correct.
means. So how are those zones determined, and why are they kind of odd shaped sometimes? Just for a background for all.
Yeah, very good, Mayor. I would be happy to address that. So currently, the city has 4 active water pressure zones. Each zone is basically a different elevation. Water pressure has to serve the residents generally between 40 and 80 PSI, and it can fluctuate within that limit. But if you get below 40, then you're running into a problem. If you get above 80 or higher, you could be running into people having problems in their houses with fixtures, not being able to handle the pressure. Zone 1 generally includes all of downtown and is a zone that has ample water capacity. Zone 2 also has good water capacity, except the issue we have in Zone 2 is that most of our high productive wells are on the east side of the interstate. And so on the west side of the interstate, we only have 2 water lines currently that cross the interstate and that get over to the other part of Zone 2. Up until recently, we only had 1 line. And so we're continuing to make improvements there. That second line was built as part of the Ustick overpass. Zone 3 is kind of a narrow strip of land that runs, it's kind of up on the hill above the Phyllis Canal, and it runs along the hillside. And because there's so much grade change there, Zone 3 is really not a large zone, but it's confined by the elevations. And then when you get up to the top of the hill down at 10th and Karcher, you're in Zone 4. We have wells all over the city. But we recognize, and that's why we had already budgeted 4 wells in Zone 3 and Zone 4. The issue we run into in Zone 4 is that the closer we get to the lake, the more apparent it is that we are running into arsenic problems. And one of the other issues that we've been dealing with is our well 21 that is down south of Orchard has been kind of a button up close to that arsenic level. And so we've been keeping a close eye on that well to make sure that we're within range there. We have interconnectivity between zones. Some of the higher elevation zones can bleed down into the lower zones. And then we have booster stations that boost up from a lower zone into a higher zone. And the reason that that can be necessary is, for example, in Zone 4, if you can't get a good well, then it makes more sense to put a good well in Zone 3 and then boost up into Zone 4. And so there's a lot of nuances, and the system is extremely complicated. The new master plan that we have received has been a big help on the kind of the macro analysis of the system. But we really appreciate the work that our consultant has been doing on diving in deep to this, some of these specific locations and evaluating things specifically for developers. With that said, I think that Mayor, does that answer your question on?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Pressure zones?
So that was good for me too on that. So questions, Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, I have a lot of questions, Rob, and maybe a lot of comments as well. So I understand we knew about this nearly 4 months ago.
In July.
So did you inform the mayor right away when you were aware that we were having infrastructure concerns about the supply and delivery of water?
I did not inform him right away. We had a few subsequent meetings with our consultant just to make sure we had a handle on what was going on. I did inform the mayor in an email at the beginning of September when we let him know that we were starting to reach out to developers to let them know of the situation.
I'm sorry, that's a little concerning to me, and I don't want to get on you too hard in a public meeting here, but to wait that long on a critical infrastructure need, I think we should have at least been made aware. He should have been made aware, and we should have been made aware, especially since those discussions were being had with other people, apparently. Because again, and Mr. Mayor, I'm not happy that I was having breakfast and someone who recognized me asked me, what do you know about us not having water? And I said, nothing, because every time I've asked the question about water, I'm assured, especially when we're considering land use, that we have no water problem. And so to hear about it in a coffee shop again sets me off, especially when 2 weeks ago I said, I don't want this happening. So to know that our Public Works Director on a critical infrastructure supply issue isn't informing the mayor so he can inform us promptly is a huge problem to me. I'm very disappointed in that. And it only gets you off the hook a little bit because that was the beginning of September, and here we are halfway through October. And I can't live with making land use decisions and then to know that developers are still having roundtables since July, and you're not bringing it up with them then. These developers are spending tens of thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. Do we not care because it's not our money? If it was your money, Mr. Mayor, would you care more? Or because it's other people's money, we'll let them have these roundtables, and then we'll come to them and say words like, we anticipate, and in a couple of years, which is very vague. Would you agree that I anticipate in a couple of years isn't specific? If I'm a developer and I'm investing tens of thousands of dollars or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would want to know that by the end of 2025, you have reasonable assurance that you're going to be able to supply water. I'm aware of one developer that's already in the development phase of his utilities, and he just found out about this. He's hundreds of thousands of dollars into his project, and he has no guarantee that we'll supply water to him maybe in a couple of years if all goes well.
So if he has an approval, which sounds like he does, he will have water. So this is all for going forward, and I understand your.
But Mr. Mayor, forgive me for interrupting you, that's not what we told him. He's not here tonight to testify, and I'm not going to tell you who he is, but that's not what we told him. We said, when you finish building, we may not be able to give you an occupancy permit.
So then he has not come forward for a hearing yet, I'm guessing, on.
He's already doing work, so he must have approvals.
Yeah, so if he does, then we will, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, please correct me.
Yeah, Mr.
we
Mayor,
will-
Councilman Williams, if they're already under construction, then we've committed to serve them.
With
So-
a timeline?
Excuse me?
With a definite time that when they are done building, that we'll serve water to them.
Yes.
I'll follow up on that.
And if I'm missing something that engineering had told them, then we may be off base there, but that's been the intent of Public Works. Especially if someone's under construction, we don't want to hold up someone that's already put, like you're saying, hundreds of thousands of dollars into the ground, and so that's not the intent.
I think in order for us to satisfy our constituents and the people that, here we are saying we've got leakage, Stephen's gone now, hotels, we've got a major retailer that broke ground across the street from D&B. I think we all know about that. What's it called? Home Depot? Where are those managers gonna live? Where are those employees gonna live? And if you wanna see people stop building here, you start telling them, we don't have water to supply to your project, and we're hoping in a couple of years, we're gonna see leakage like we haven't seen since 2007. I think we need an aggressive plan that would have a definite date better than a couple of years. And I appreciate the fact that you have a lot of experts in engineering, Mr. McDonald. The community loves Haley. I have heard nothing but rave reviews about Haley. Okay, in spite of a couple of questions we've had recently about how engineering is working, the community loves Haley, but this community has also said, we'll donate people to a blue ribbon panel to help work through. And you mentioned some of them. Let's get these developers involved. Let's let them help us build these wells. Let's let them help us get to the bottom of this. I think we need to reach out to the community right now, because putting this off for a couple of years is not acceptable. We need an answer sooner, and Mr. Mayor, we need more information sooner. I don't even know how to begin to express my frustration tonight.
Yeah, and I think on that, I think the important thing is to make sure the public knows we have water. All the developments have been approved, will have no issues attaining water. And so this is looking into the future to ensure that we have the proper water for those developments in the future. All the developers that have been approved, I'm looking at the map, and again, this is strictly out in the Karcher Farmway area. Zone 2, as was mentioned, which is really the majority of the city. Zone 1, no issues there. This is out in, really the majority of it is undeveloped land as I'm looking at this map on it. So obviously lots of potential for applications coming in on that. And again, you know, I understand that you wish to know that sooner, so I do apologize on that. As we look at these and assess them, you know, these issues come up periodically in that regards. And knowing that water is available, and that we do foresee it to be back and up to where it needs to be before any future developments really start construction. So if you are looking at submitting an application, you are usually at least 2 or 3 years from constructing. And I think, in talking with Mr. McDonald, when he's met with, you know, numerous of developers, especially the larger developers in our community, they understand that, and no issues whatsoever in that regards. And it's nice that they are wanting to step up to help to construct some of these, to put them on their land in that regard. So, you know, there was an assessment made by myself after discussing with Mr. McDonald. As mentioned, he did email me in 1st of September and saw it as, you know, a typical hurdle to get over for developers, but knowing that we were adequate where we're at, and obviously, I know that you and maybe perhaps other council members see it as more drastic as the view that I had in regards to that, but knowing that we were going to be able to provide water to the developers that we had and that we were working towards a solution, did not send that information out. So I apologize on that. Going back, obviously, I would, knowing the desire of it now and concern in that regards, but we feel very comfortable knowing that we can provide water to the developers that are out there now, and that it will be coming online in the near future as they move forward with those developments. But we will continue to follow up with them. If they have concerns, we always recommend they reach out to staff, whether it's to Mr. McDonald in his office or mine. We'd love to sit down with them and have just a really open, honest conversation, find out, you know, where their biggest concerns are at and alleviate that in regards to that. So we want to ensure misinformation is not getting out there, but people know that we do have water to provide for all the development that's been approved, and working tirelessly towards getting those new wells online as soon as possible.
But that's my problem, Mr. Mayor. I don't think we'd be having this discussion if people hadn't come to me in the first place last week. And you want to know why they come to us? They come to us because they know that unless they do, this isn't going to be talked about. And these people that were talking to me said they're ready to pull their applications because once they're approved, then that triggers them to purchase the property that they're under contract with. And they can't invest that much money into a maybe, which is why I would, again, strongly encourage you to make a commitment to get outside involvement. You know, there are others on this council that have worked on projects that are big, that could be afforded us opportunities to bring clarity, to bring communication, to bring reassurances, to bring experts in that could aid our experts in saying what is the most expeditious way to get this done Because again, it's not our money we're talking about here. It's other people's money, and it's the contribution to this community that we're gonna lose if we lose these developments.
Yeah, and I know that we care about it regardless if it's our money or not. We take those responsibilities seriously, and I would strongly recommend that they reach out and come and meet with us, sit down, and anybody else that has issues or concerns, it is being worked on by the experts that we have and moving forward very, very vigorously. And we take it very seriously, as when I was working in the planning department. We took those things very seriously. We knew that it's other people's money that they're putting out there. And so we didn't just half-heartedly, dismiss it or not follow through like maybe we should have. We took it very seriously. And I know Rob and his department does, as do I, in trying to work forward, through these issues. Unfortunately, issues do come up, and we're doing everything we can to work forward in the most expeditiously way possible.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may add, Councilman Williams, I appreciate your comments, I really do. Trust me, no one's less happy about this situation than I am. And this is a result of the city operating for decades without building the wells that they should have been building. I would just mention on the timeline, we've given developers a firm date on something before, and if we don't deliver when they think that it's gonna be done, then you run into maybe even a bigger mess than you're in now. And so I'm always careful when I give deadlines, especially on well development. There's a lot of ambiguity. It has to go through DEQ, and there's things that we can't control. And so we give ourselves a conservative estimate on, we think this is gonna be done. We've talked to professionals. We have our modeler is a consultant that's very good with water systems. We have HDR on board, and they're doing our well design. So we are dealing with professionals that do this all the time, and we've talked to them on timelines, and they've given us timelines, and we've said, okay, what's a conservative timeline, and then what do you really think that you may be able to get it at? And we tend to tell developers the conservative timeline so that we don't sell ourselves short.
Then what's our best case scenario? Tell me, since I'm a city councilman asking you.
The rough estimate, they told us they would have a well online by the end of 2026. But a better case scenario would be much earlier in 2026, like spring probably. And so a lot of it depends on some of those factors they don't control. A lot of it depends on what kind of water you find in the test well. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into drilling a well. But we are moving forward, and we have put together a very aggressive plan so that we can get this done as quick as we can. And we have 2 different developers that have taken on well projects in their sites so they can get them built to their time frame, which tends to be quicker than the city because they don't have to jump through all the hoops we have to do.
Councilor Allgood.
Yeah, Rob, so as we go forward, as this council goes forward and hears land use requests, you said that you will put in the packet a reference to water. How would you recommend we go forward? When someone comes here and says, I want to put 100 homes south of town, what is your recommendation? Say yes and keep going, or say no, we can't promise water? I mean, how do we approach that when we're saying yes or no on these things?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Allgood, we are putting a note in the packet that says they will not be served until the water is available. And so these developers know that. Every developer that has not come through the city yet knows that that's the stipulation. But we have allowed them, if you still want to go through the city and start on your entitlements, you're permitted to do that. And so what I would recommend to council, assuming there's no other issues with the development, that note will be in the packet, so they're going to know they can't get served with water until there's sufficient water available. But they can still go through their entitlements, they can get their site zoned properly, they can have their site plan laid out. And so if they want to move forward on that, they have the prerogative to. So it wouldn't be necessary for council to hold them up on the water situation because that's already going to be a stipulation in their engineering report.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, the water is there. There's ample water, it's simply getting the construction done, getting the proper permits to get it built. Water's there, we just need to get the well built to get it accessible.
Yeah, and we have not had any issues with water quantity in the groundwater. And I've emailed back and forth a little bit with Mr. Stoddard on that, and I appreciate his comments with regards to the irrigation. It is, like I said, the hydrology, it's very complicated. But because of where we're at in this valley, because we're at the low end of the valley, finding the quantity of water in the ground has not been an issue for municipal wells.
Counselor, or did you have a follow-up?
Yeah,
Counselor?
I just had one quick follow-up. So, and I just want to, again, I believe the mayor did a good job, but for everything that we have approved, that this council has signed off on, they will have water when they're ready to get water?
The estimation is yes, currently, but I mentioned that we do have our consultant doing a deep dive, and he's looking closer into that to see if there will be issues. We're confident that every development that's under construction would certainly be able to be served. I think it's more the developers that have, 5 phases, and they have some phases way out. I don't know that they would get to those phases before we have, a couple wells online. But those are the ones where once we get this analysis back, then we'll be able to make a determination for sure if there are some that are out of ways that we still need to limit.
Counselor Dittenber.
Thank you very much for your explanation. I do have a couple questions that might help me understand some things. First of all, I think the city is in the Boise regional area of DEQ, correct? We're in the Boise regional
Yes.
area. And Dan Smith, I think, is because I think I remember having conversations here not too long ago about the city going through some expansion in their water stuff. So I think those plans are underway. But with regards to water, we deal in 2 different things. We deal in static pressure and dynamic pressure. And so even if we don't have the exact number of wells our consultant needs, can we still service the population with maybe 40 pounds of pressure rather than 48 pounds of pressure? I mean, are we at a really critical point where the water quality is in jeopardy if we didn't put in new wells? And I see, Ashley back there nodding her head.
The water quality? I'll let Ashley address this.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Dittenber, the pressure zones and the pressures that are required in those zones are intended to allow everyone's fixtures and plumbing to function properly. If we have pressures that go below 40, you can expect people to start to have some issues with water pressure, shower, those kinds of things not working properly. If we have pressures below 20 psi, we start to have chlorine residual issues, and then we're in boil order zone. So we really don't want those pressures to go too low because it causes other problems.
So of our pumps that we have, are they all pumping at capacity? Are they all, doing well? Can we improve our access to water by improving the current wells that we have, or are we just short on wells?
That's a great question. Mr. Mayor, Councilor Dittenber, we are working on rehabilitating some existing wells that are offline. That is on our capital improvement plan right now. But I would say, as Director McDonald mentioned, we're also working on additional infrastructure, and most of that is directly related to growth and the amount of fire flow that we're required to have for specific kinds of development that occurs in different zones.
Okay, very good. I don't see any other lights on, so appreciate the update on that, and I'm sure we'll have some more in the near future in that regard. So that, I believe, is our final item for discussion other than council comments, so we'll move into that. Councilor Doty. There's one more? Oh, sorry, Robin. Yes, here's the notes right in front of me. So you wanted to address,
Thank
go
you.
right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll try not to keep you too long. Thank you for letting me crash the party here. Just a couple updates really quick. We have our joint workshop scheduled on November 7th to go through the comprehensive plan. And then on February February 10th, I wanted to see if council would be available to do a special council meeting. That is on a Monday. And the reason for this is we would like to bring the complete comprehensive plan to council. There's a lot of information in it. It's gonna take a little while, so we really don't wanna schedule that with other public hearings.
Urban renewal is on February 10th.
Can we do February 11th on a Tuesday? And the reason I'm asking for a special meeting too is because we are trying to limit our public hearings to 2 or 3 if they're non-contentious. We are already booking land use applications. We're already into March of next year. And so we don't want to have to bump a developer that's got an application coming in. So we'd like to get this comprehensive plan on a special meeting so it doesn't impact developers' applications.
How long do you foresee it to last?
I would say maximum, maybe a couple hours at the most.
So like a 5 to 7
Sure,
would work?
that would work. I'm sorry, what was that?
It would just be a couple hours. So do
Yeah,
like
just a
5
couple
PM to 7
hours.
PM, or- Yeah, 5:30 to 7:30.
5:30?
Or we could do 5:30 AM to 7:30 AM.
Yes, that works for me.
And then the plan would be, Mayor and Council, is after that meeting, we've been working diligently on ordinance amendments that would implement this comprehensive plan. So at the following council meeting on February 18th, we would bring you the draft ordinances that would implement that comprehensive plan if it's adopted.
Just a quick question, is there public testimony at both of these? The one you referred to and then this one as well? So they could go in length, because
Yes, Mayor.
it's
and-
quite extensive. I've been working on it with you and
Yep.
your team for months. And
Yes.
so there's a lot of information.
Yeah, it does have to be a public hearing, yes.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just like a workshop, just to
No,
present.
the one on November 7th is just a joint workshop. And the reason we're pushing out the actual adoption to February is once we do the workshop with council and the commission, any changes or recommendations that the council or commission has, we want to make those changes, and then we want to put the draft plan again out to the public for a minimum of 30 days, so they can comment on them. So this would be like our 6th public participation for the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so an plan for an all-nighter, sounds like. And then February 12th, 11th, what was the date?
February 11th
Okay.
would be when we would present the final draft plan. Logan Simpson would be here to help address that as well. And we'd have a complete report on our public participation for council.
Okay.
And then just one last note, I just wanted to note on the sub-area master plan that is coming before council at the next council meeting for adoption. It did go before the P and Z Commission on October 9th, and they did recommend approval of the plan, so that will be coming before council. And then we did just complete our Parks Strategic Plan. The Parks and Recreation Director and myself are meeting this week to go through that, and then we jointly will decide on a date to bring that to council for adoption, or consideration, I should say. And that's all I had.
Okay, very good. So February 11th, hopefully everybody's got that on their calendar, and we'll plan for that. 5:30 till, who knows?
I can bring snacks if it helps.
Well, depends what the snacks are, I guess. Some pizza pockets, hot pockets. Okay, excellent. So we got that in. Okay, so now on to council comments. Councilor Doty.
I just appreciate everybody in the audience that stuck it out with us. This is a fairly early one, but we appreciate you and your attention to the city, and thanks for being here.
Councilor Stoddard.
Yep, this one's for Mr. Waterman. A couple weeks ago, I asked Mr. Hilty to look up to see whether a urban renewal area could be canceled, and he hasn't gotten back to me yet. Just wondering whether maybe you could cover that with him and see if he's found out anything. He said on the surface, yes, it can, but he'd have to check a few things to look at it legally, so.
Mayor Councilman Stoddard, I'm happy to ask him about that when I see him tomorrow.
Okay, so, and then second thing, I want to comment to Mrs. Warwick's concern about donations. I know one of the, I don't know if you were talking about the Veterans Hall, but they got 30,000 this year, but we did an analysis as far as what that hall returns if it wasn't there. And we did one 2 years ago. It was $84 million is what they bring into the community relative to salaries, services, and those kind of things. And if the hall wasn't there, then it would be up to the county to make sure that they do supply the services, you know, to this area, and the city would be part of that, which would be a large cost too. So I just wanted to clarify that. So thank you.
Good. Councilor Register.
Yeah, I just had a couple of quick things. I'm frustrated after tonight's meeting, and I'm really frustrated after the whole information about the well thing. I think it's worth pointing out that the LOI on the hotel was dated on September 17th, and it was placed on the very next council meeting agenda, like within 3 weeks, because we had a long month. Immediately it came to council. But this well thing has had 3 to 4 council meetings between the beginning of September and now, and we're just hearing about it. So I think it's frustrating, the transparency. I don't see how we can keep approving big developments. I don't see how we can keep approving big apartment buildings. I just don't see how we can keep doing it until we know what's happening with that, and until we have these plans in place. So, and I am going to ask again that this council consider having a plan in place before we approve any hotels or anything like that in an area that we're trying to create a plan for. It seems to make more sense. And then the only other thing that isn't, I don't think it's as contentious, but this council has never been asked to be part of the tree lighting ceremony or the Christmas parade. So I was kind of hoping that this year, Mayor, you would want to include us. I know I'm sure you go up there and do something, and that maybe council could be there with you, or walk the parade with you, or be invited to do that.
Councilor Williams.
Yeah, I'm out of breath. I do have a question. When are the lights coming on?
November 22nd.
November 22nd.
Yep.
And then finally, just another question regarding that, and I know we've already communicated about it, but we're doing more to ensure we have some public safety in place on our main streets, and I appreciate the communication, both from you and from Rob, but I think we've got a ways to go, and so let's stay on top of that.
Yeah, definitely. Mr. McDonald, remind me on that. We'll talk to Chief when he gets back. Make sure we're all on the same page. Councilor Allgood.
Is the graffiti removal up and running? I still see a lot of graffiti. I get complaints from people. When is it going to start disappearing?
Debbie.
Actually, he just signed it Friday. So, I was just showing Councilor Wittenberg that this weekend, it seems like we were hit with graffiti in the downtown. And he is coming in the morning, probably about 5 o'clock this morning, to start getting rid of it. There was one at the post office.
So if citizens log on and report graffiti,
There is on the PD website, they can report it there, or we just set up graffiti at cityofcaldwell.org today, and they can do it either way. And we're taking complaints, absolutely.
okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, Councilor Dittenberg. Nothing? Okay. So just real quick, tree lighting. We have actually never had a tree lighting ceremony since I've been mayor. It was a few years before that, before COVID, so, but we are this year. So that's why you haven't been invited in the past, because we have not had one. The lights simply come on at dusk, which they will again on the 22nd, but we will be doing a tree lighting ceremony on the 23rd of November. So we'll make sure that you are aware of that. And then as far as the parade, the council's more than welcome to have a nightlight parade or a float in the parade if they wish. I don't know if the mayor's really ever had his own on that. I know I have not. On that, so I usually go with the mayor's youth in that regards. But if the council would like to do one, they're more than welcome to get together, plan one, and we can get you in touch with Travis to make sure you get in line for that. So that's it. So I didn't really have anything other than just those questions the council register brought up. So with that, oh, yeah.
The lights are gonna come on the 22nd, but there's not an event on the 22nd?
So-
Event's on the 23rd?
Sorry, so there is. So Winter Wonderland starts on the 22nd, so it's the 22nd to the 24th, so Friday to Sunday. The lights just come on at dusk in that regards. The pretty, like all of the Christmas lights, they'll all come on at dusk, except for the tree. We do have a new tree this year, so that we will be doing a tree lighting ceremony at 7 p.m. that night, that Friday night on the 22nd. Yes, and that's where we will kind of flip a switch for the tree, the new tree to be lit up. But the Christmas lights will all still be on. It would just created too much of a safety issue with the light, all the lights coming on at once. You'd have tens of thousands of people surrounded in one tight area. I know Rob always worried about the bridge falling in because so many people were on it. So we don't do that anymore. So now it's just dispersed throughout it. So at 7 p.m. will be the tree lighting. So it should be fantastic. We're excited for that. And that is all. So hopefully that clarifies that. So yeah, the celebration goes on all weekend long, but the lights come on at dusk, and then we'll do the tree lighting at 7 p.m. for everyone. Okay, so with that, we stand adjourned.